Predators win and complete a perfect 5-0 road trip for the first time ever. They're headed back to Smashville with 10 points, and we hope you enjoyed it too. Preds win.
Predators winners 5 in a row last night. Ian, who called it?
You called it.
I called it on the road trip. They got spanked by Dallas. And I said to everybody on that road trip, I said they're going to win this game in St. Louis, and they're going to go on a heater on this road trip. Now, I thought it was going to be like 4-0-1. And instead, with the Predators, it's 5-0-0. How about that? So that's how we start the show. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live in the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Big one tomorrow night for the Predators against Ottawa. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So I went on Cameo this morning. You want to know why?
Please.
Well, I actually used to do Cameo, but it just wasn't worth it. And honestly, I thought it was kind of lame, right? Like, I thought it was kind of lame being like, hey, Scooter, happy birthday. And if you're unfamiliar of what Cameo is, it is a website where people can buy personalized messages from celebrities. And so, for instance, somebody who's more famous than me would charge way, 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 way more, which is why I went on Cameo today. Because I was trying to find out to see if the legendary football coach Jimmy Johnson, who's now on Fox's NFL coverage, I was wondering to see if Jimmy Johnson himself was on Cameo. You want to know why I was wondering if Jimmy Johnson was on Cameo? Because I was going to pay to have Jimmy Johnson start the show saying, how about them Predators? 5 in a row. By the way, I would have gotten Jimmy to do a how about them Predators and a how about them Titans, just so that whenever it's apropos, we can get the Jimmy. How about them Cowboys? And that's how I feel about the Predators after that road trip. How about them Predators? Now, again, I figured that after the zig versus Jersey and Dallas at home, which was embarrassing, I figured a zag was coming. I went to Barry Trotz that Saturday before puck drop in St. Louis, and I was like, you guys are about to go on a heater. I just want you to know that. And Barry, of course, nervous before the start of a game, he was kind of like, the impression I got was from your lips to God's ears was kind of probably how Barry felt. But I just knew it was coming. Now, again, I didn't predict 5-0-0. I thought 4-0-1. So I can't say that I 100% called it, but I 99% called it. But there are two major takeaways from this road trip that I think are equally important of both the road trip and its success for the Predators. Number one is that road trip is incredibly encouraging when it comes to Andrew Burnett and his ability to lead this team. Because not only did the hockey team clearly get the message after that Dallas embarrassment, I mean, the Stars put the Predators over their knee, and Matt Duchene spanked them. But the guys who needed the kick in the pants, the young guys, the bottom six forwards, clearly they got the message, right? And when it comes to Andrew Burnett as well, I can't help but be encouraged by the fact that they won the 2 trap games over the weekend. It wasn't the prettiest. The San Jose game, I felt very comfortable after 2 periods. The Predators were going to take care of business, and then all hell broke loose in the 3rd period, and somehow, some way, I mean, I don't know how they confirmed that call Saturday night saying that the puck didn't cross the line, but somehow, some way, they said it wasn't a goal, and you ended up winning. But you won. That was a trap game. You just beat St. Louis, who's in the playoffs, L.A., who's in the playoffs, Vegas, the defending Cup champions, they're in the playoffs. You go to crummy San Jose. You have to fly from L.A. to San Jose, and then you got to fly back. And, I mean, both games represented huge trap opportunities, and they didn't lose. They didn't play their best last night either. And I tweeted out after the 2nd period, it was 1-1 going to the 3rd, and I had this feeling inside of me where I'm like, it really kind of feels like they're losing. Like, I know it's 1-1, but Lankinen's out here making saves left and right, and if it's not for him, I mean, you would have been in some real trouble. But again, they won. That's what good teams do. unfocused teams, undisciplined teams, they do not go on a road trip, beat the good teams, and keep it together in order to beat the bad teams. This was a huge step in the right direction for Andrew Burnett. So I have a lot more confidence with Bruno running the team than I did before this road trip, because clearly he sent a message and they got it. So that's the first thing that I'm incredibly encouraged by. Number two, we're going to have a playoff chase here in Nashville. I remember a couple of years ago, I want to say maybe it was 2016, 17, before the Predators got hot, which was the 2017 run, and then 2018 they won the President's Trophy. I remember in either 16 or 17, the Predators had a ticket marketing campaign called the March to the Playoffs. Of course, obviously, nice little play on words, the month of March, headed to the playoffs. And I remember there was a whole, ticket push. Get your tickets for the March to the Playoffs. Well, where I feel about this team right now and this season is there will be an exciting march to the playoffs one way or another. Because every game the rest of the way until April 15th matters now. St. Louis, Minnesota, Calgary, they ain't going anywhere. And now their games matter too. So when St. Louis plays tomorrow, they check your phones. Let's see, what is it in the third? Because all these games are going to matter the rest of the year. The Predators are not going to win every single game the rest of the way. We all know that. But now there is juice. And I've always talked about this when it comes to hockey and basketball and baseball and basically the sports that aren't football, where there's only a handful of games, and so every single game means something in the NFL or college football. But the other sports, it's different. I can't get excited when somebody tells me in November, like, this is a big game. I can't necessarily get excited about that because how many teams aren't in the playoffs because of what happened in November? There's plenty of time to right the ship. And what I can't do, and I think is incredibly disingenuous, and again, I think it's probably like a ticket-selling thing more than it is a reality thing, but I hate when people are like, big game tonight on October 28th. It's like, is it really a big game? Now, it might be a big game to the coach, because in hockey, they'll fire you, 2 weeks into the season, but is it really a big game? And you know the answer to that. But right now, every game the rest of the way, it matters for the Predators, because this is going to come down, I believe, to 1 point here, 1 point there, one game here, one game there. So every single one of these babies the rest of the way matters. Tomorrow night's game, I'm scared to death of it. It's got trap game written all over it. Now, I got to give the Predators credit, because last night was a trap game and Saturday night was a trap game, and they won them. But Ottawa still kind of stinks, right, Ian?
I mean, kind of.
Okay. So Ottawa still kind of stinks. I haven't been keeping up with them. I can't even tell you anybody on that team.
They have one of the Kachuk brothers, Brady.
They have Brady Kachuk.
Yeah. Matthew Kachuk's brother, yeah.
Who else they got?
I mean, they have a couple other kids. Josh Norris, I think, is playing still.
Do I know the coach?
No.
Okay. So, San Jose tomorrow night. Or, excuse me, San Jose was Saturday night. Ottawa tomorrow night.
Yeah, they have 53 points, 25 and 27 and 3.
Nah. So, that's a trap game, right? The team is flying back today from L.A., which I probably thought about, like last night I was driving in the car before the game, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, if I were the Predators, would I fly back tonight after the game, knowing that we're going to land probably around 4 a.m., but then they can sleep in their beds, all morning today and get whatever errands they've got to get done off the road trip and then really dial in on hockey tomorrow? Or would I fly back today, everybody go to bed at a reasonable hour, you wake up, you get on the plane, you go home? That's what they've chose to do. And I'm nervous because, again, long road trip, positive energy, very successful, everybody happy. Minnesota and John Hines right behind you in the standings. They're coming in Thursday. That's a biggie. Colorado, a measuring stick game. That's at home on Saturday. You haven't been very good. Oh, I'm worried about Tuesday. But that's what's great about the situation the Predators are in now with their heater that they went on this road trip is every game matters the rest of the way. Tomorrow's game, trap game, gotta have it. Thursday's game, Minnesota, John Hines right behind you in the standings. It's almost double the points. LA's in front of the Predators. Maybe you can catch them. So the march to the playoffs really is upon us. And all I've wanted is one competitive playoff series this year. I wanted an exciting March, an exhilarating April, and one competitive playoff series. And it might not be out of the realm of possibility. So Barry Trotz told us right before the start of the season, he said, look, it's a roller coaster, strap in, enjoy the ride. Well, right now they've won 5 in a row. And on you go on the roller coaster of emotion that's going to be the last month of the season. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you got a thought, 615-737-1025 on the Predators and their victories on the road, which, again, everybody else was crapping on them after the Dallas game, and so was I. But I saw this heater coming. Coming up next, the most encouraging sign that this team might actually be kind of decent. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
McCarron will peel back. Good look there for Yossi.
Nasty move to the middle. I think if he waits a little bit longer, he's got a better scoring chance.
Sherwood a steal. Smith shoots wide left on a low one-timer. Sherwood near corner. Center point Fabro. Slapper. Save. Dostal. Rebound. Score! Michael McCarron right in front. Predators 3. Ducks 1 with 11:17 to go.
Big Sexy cleaning it up in the crease. Some great movement, and the Preds seem to come alive on that one. Just a Sherwood seam pass back to Fabro. The shot. McCarron beats his guy Carlson back to the net. Scoops it up and brings it around. Uses his reach on the forehand and slides it in the net.
15 different goal scorers on this trip. What does it say about your team that you were able to get contributions up and down the lineup?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, you see it by the results. We win every game. Everybody played their part. All the lines, I felt like we're playing well in every game, and definitely proud of the way we played this whole week after a tough week. And amazing road trip, and it wasn't easy. Back to back today, a lot of games, so we found a way, which is huge.
We got to get that play-by-play cut again. Ian, if you could, after Max announces the Michael McCarron goal, can we just play what Hal said just one more time?
Corner. Center point Fabro. Slapper. Save. Dostal. Rebound. Score!
Wait for it.
Michael McCarron right in front. Predators 3. Ducks 1 with 11:17 to go.
Big Sexy cleaning it up in the crease.
Oh, my God. That is something. So I do want to say this about Michael McCarron. I thought that goal right there, I thought that was kind of the game sealer. But more important, although I guess, Anaheim did score with, 2 minutes to go or whatever, and then they had the extra attacker and everything else. But anywho, I really felt like that was where we could all kind of breathe easy on a game the Predators didn't play very well in. But the reason why I'm actually feeling better about the team, in spite of the fact that I expected them to go on the road and win these games, is because it really has been a team effort, right? Yeah, Philip Forsberg had a goal last night, and the goal he had last night was what I call a solo shot, where a guy steps up to the plate and is like, all right, I'm putting us in front on the next pitch, and then launches one 350 feet. And in order to be able to do that, you have to be good. And Forsberg can do that. And he did it last night. And Yossi scored last night. But this entire road trip hasn't been about Yossi and Forsberg and O'Reilly. No. It's been about Glass and Novak and Evangelista and McCarron and Sherwood. And it's almost like every single one of those guys, I can point out something that they did on this road trip. And I can say, you won this game for the Nashville Predators. Like Kiefer Sherwood, 2 goals the other night at San Jose, but also last night, all hell's breaking loose in a tied game 1-1 before Forsberg scores, and it's Kiefer Sherwood who sprints out of the box and ends up getting into the play, and while Lankinen is down on the ice and the puck is just laying right there just for somebody to give it a little taparoo into the net, Sherwood comes in and gets the puck away. And so each one of these guys is doing their part. And that is the sign of a decent team. Because what I was worried about in the past with the Predators is that Philip Forsberg has superstar ability. Now, he's not McDavid, and he's never going to be. But he's got inside of him the ability to carry the team. When Forsberg goes on a heater, he can literally carry the entire team. But that's not what happened on this road trip. It wasn't like Forsberg and Yossi and McDonough and those guys didn't show up. And it's not like you didn't get great goaltending. Because you did. You got great goaltending on this trip from both Saros and Lankinen. And I thought Lankinen in his 2 performances, Vegas and last night, I thought he was absolutely outstanding. But remember when you got to the Cup final, and I am not saying this is the 17 team, and I'm not going to pretend this is the 17 team, and I'm not even, I don't even want to go there, really. But in 17, remember how you managed through those playoffs. It wasn't Forsberg going crazy. It was everybody, every night, and it was somebody new, right? Like in the first game, it was Rene who stole it. The second game, you got 5 goals, including one, from Sissons that was a backbreaker. You had the hat trick from Colton Sissons in the Anaheim series. There was Kevin Fiala with the game winner against Chicago. There was one game where I want to say, what was that big old boy, the Cody McLeod. Cody McLeod scored a game-winning goal in the St. Louis series. It wasn't just Forsberg and Fisher and Arvidsson and Yossi and Subban. Colin Wilson and Pontus Aberg in Game 5 of the Anaheim series. If this team's going to be any good, that is what has to happen for this team. Now, the big boys have to put the puck in the net, and they, for the most part, will. They've done it, though they get cold sometimes, and when they get cold, you're not very good. But, they're going to have to get the contributions that they got from the bottom 6 the way they did on this trip. I mean, I saw Cody Glass score in Vegas, and I'm like, do that every time. Luke Evangelista took one the other way on a breakaway and had a beautiful move on Jordan Bennington against St. Louis. Do that more often. That is very important. Now, is all of that sustainable? I don't know. The goaltending is sustainable. And if I was asking one of the bottom 6 guys to carry the load, if I were to go to Kiefer Sherwood and I were to say to Kiefer Sherwood, hey, man, that game you had Saturday night in San Jose, I need it every night. That's not sustainable. But everybody contributing, that might be possible. Phone lines are driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Travis texted in at the very top of the show and said, Jared, whatever you do, do not get back on the bandwagon. Jared, stay off the bandwagon, please. That's what Travis said. So let me just say this. I predicted that the Predators were going to get hot on this road trip. So I'm not surprised that it happened. The game last night, again, wasn't their best performance. Neither was Saturday. They gutted it out, which was a good sign. But I am scared to death of tomorrow. Scared to death. I'm scared to death of this week. Because, quite frankly, the Predators have not played very well at home. And let me tell you what again, I'm not somebody, all I care about is whether or not the Predators win or the Titans win or again, my teams. All I care about is whether or not they win. Most of them are your teams, too. But I really, really, really don't want the Predators to miss the playoffs this year and for Minnesota to make it. Because of all the bullcrap that I've said and was said to me about John Hines over the years, the last thing I need is for John Hines to beat the Predators to get into the playoffs. So that being said, I'm scared to death, just like I was scared to death of San Jose and Anaheim this weekend. So if that's my way of telling you I'm not hopping back on the bandwagon, there you go. More of your phones, 615-737-1025. We're right to you next here on the program. And I do have to give the Predators credit that I didn't see coming from them. And might be a good sign. We'll do that next. Hey, Preds fans, do not miss Wednesday night Smashville Live at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs at 6 o'clock. See your Predators star players up close and personal, and you can get autographs and pictures. And this week's guests are Big Sexy Michael McCarron, who, as Hal said yesterday, was cleaning it up in the crease. Michael McCarron and Dante Fabro will be this week's special guests. Again, that is Brewhouse South in Cool Springs at 6 o'clock on Wednesday. Smashville Live is brought to you by the Black Abbey Brewing Company and ESPN Bet Sportsbook.
I think we're really playing for each other through the stretch of games, and it was a really gutsy effort tonight, and hard back-to-back, and the end of a road trip where you can lose your focus. So we're growing as a group, and we're growing together, and it was a good trip, and we go home and we got a tough week ahead.
There you go. That was Coach last night after the victory, and let me just say this, and then we're right to your phones. I am incredibly proud of the fact that the Predators did not slip up in the two trap games, San Jose and Anaheim. Now, they tried, especially the San Jose game. I mean, I left my parents' house. I was over there Saturday night. I left at the end of the second period, and I felt good and was like, all right, let me get home, turn on the game. And then Granlund put one in the net. And then last night, I mean, I thought the Predators were going to lose that game probably right until McCarron scored to make it 3-1. I felt like they were going to lose that game the whole night. So even if it wasn't the prettiest, they got the job done, and that's what good teams do. And now they got a trap game tomorrow against Ottawa. Lee has been holding patiently and is up next here on Stillman and Company. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Lee?
Hey, Gary, like the show.
Thank you.
Hopefully the talk about trading Saros after these recent games is over. Can you imagine him walking out of that locker room and what the morale would be if he's traded for a bunch of 2 and 3 years out draft picks? I mean, after all they've done and all the naysayers to come back like this, don't you think we ought to give the team a chance to make the playoffs?
So, Lee, I think that's a really good question. Here's what I would say on the Saros front. And tomorrow, Barry Trotz, 5 o'clock, right here. So we'll ask him about it. I don't think that winning or losing changes the equation as far as the goalie is concerned. And that goes against 95% of what I envision the way that most of this stuff works, right? Like the way most of this works in the NHL is the teams are trying to decide whether or not they are buyers or sellers, and if they win a bunch of games, then they're buyers, and if they lose a bunch of games, then they're sellers. And so if we're not good, then all of a sudden, let's go ahead and make the change, or that's fine. But when I look at the Predators and the Saros situation, I think that is independent of how the team is playing. Now, if the team was competing for the Stanley Cup, then maybe it'd be different, but they're not. So I think that the reality on Saros is the price is the price, and it is going to be a steep price. And so when you say, if they just were to trade for a bunch of picks, I don't think Barry's okay with that. Barry came on our show. This might have been last month. I can't remember. But I asked Barry about how he views draft choices in these trades now, because the Predators are well into the rebuild. And no offense, but I think Barry would agree with us. I don't want to be rebuilding for 45 years. I mean, we want this to be like a 1 year, 1.5 year. Like that's what we don't want this to be a forever. Like, no, we want this right now. So my guess is he wants NHL players in return, or at least an NHL player who we talked about Dawson Mercer. We talked about Quentin Byfield, who I actually think is pretty good. We talked about all those guys. That's what he's looking for. So it's not like nothing would come back in return. I think there's very much a chance that you would get an NHL player in return for Saros. But I don't think it changes the equation just you winning or losing. I think it is the price, and if you pay the price, then you get the player. And if you don't pay the price, then you don't get the goalie. I don't care, New Jersey, how desperate you are. If you don't come to the table with Dawson Mercer, we're not having a conversation. So I don't think this really changes it that much. I think there's like one decision that the Predators have to make that losing a bunch would have made for them. And it's Tommy Novak. Now, I don't think that when Elliot Friedman said last week on the midday show that he thinks Tommy Novak is going to get somewhere in the $4 million range, in the fours, which could mean, 4.1 or 4.9. I'm like, that's crazy talk. And if that's what Novak's camp is saying right now, they might say that right now, just like Tanner Jeannot's camp wanted big money last year. And then they get to the market and the big money's not there. But if they had lost a bunch on this road trip, then they probably would try to trade Tommy Novak. Right now, I don't have a problem. And I am not focused on this season, but I don't have a problem if they keep Tommy Novak, and Novak is a useful player, and then they go into free agency and somebody is smoking the kind of rock that Elliot Friedman's people were telling him about, and they go out and they give Tommy Novak $4 million. I'm not matching that. Congratulations to Tommy and to whoever signs him. Whereas if you were definitely a seller, then you would trade Novak. Other than that, I think for the most part, the decisions kind of stay the same. You still need to clear out a defenseman or two because Spencer Stastny at Milwaukee is ready to be in the NHL. And he's ready to be in the NHL sooner rather than later. So they want to make that now, and they're not going to re-sign, I don't think, Carrier or Fabro, so they want to make that move even if they're winning. Saros, the price is the price. You meet it, you get him. You don't, you don't. And then Novak's the one guy who's kind of a question mark there. Texter into the text line says, Jared, would you still trade Saros at the deadline or wait until after the season? You know, the old man used to have a saying that was, you never make a decision until you have to. And so where the Predators are right now, Askarov is ready for the NHL, but he doesn't have to be in the NHL right now. You don't have to make that decision today. Now, is there going to be a point in time where you have to pick one goalie over the other? Yes. And I think it comes with Saros' contract. So if UC Saros gets a new contract, then I think UC Saros is the goalie of the Predators for the long term, and then you look to deal Askarov. Remember, Barry offered Askarov to San Jose for the 4th overall pick as part of a package and got turned down last year. So if he gets a deal in which he is really willing to jump, he'll move the young goalie. If he gets a deal across his desk for a player he wants, and it'll take moving the old goalie, he'll do that too. And I don't think the Predators have to make a decision anytime soon, not right away. And I still think there will be a market at the draft. And if you want to go that route and then turn it over to Askarov, that's one thing. If you want to go into next season with Saros as the goalie, Askarov as the backup, and then he goes up and down. So when he plays, he's up. Then he goes down and he plays. And then he comes back up and he plays. If you wanted to do that, you could. And then midway through the year, you could assess whether or not you're a contender. And if you're a contender, you keep the goalie. And if not, you let him go. And you won't get as good of a return, but that's okay. To me, that's okay. Guilford is up next here on the program. Thank you for calling. What's up, Guilford?
Hey, Jared. Thanks for the answer here. This goes a little bit of what you're discussing, but with Kevin Lankinen right now playing really well in net, and as we're mentioning, Askarov ready for the NHL, do you think that gives Barry a little more comfortability to move on from Saros and get something in return? Since Lankinen, as well as he played last night, Askarov want to come up, could we see something that many people are talking about, a Lankinen Askarov duo possibly next year, and getting something in return from Saros? And I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, I don't think that Lankinen moves the needle in this discussion at all. And Lankinen is playing great. And I could see if somebody called about Lankinen. Now, this would have to be a salary cap deal as much as anything else. Some teams got a $6 million forward who's not good or is injured, but they can't put him on LTIR, which I still don't totally understand the rules of LTIR anyways. I mean, somebody told me that Vegas is going to be able to put Mark Stone and Jack Eichel on long-term injured reserve and clear up $19 million in cap space, and then they can bring those guys back for the playoffs. I don't understand how any of that works. But, anywho, so I would argue that the long-term, a team's going to need salary cap space around the deadline. You've got $8 million. So it wouldn't surprise me If a team had a $6 million forward that they didn't like anymore, the same way that you didn't like Matt Duchene anymore last year, and they were looking to upgrade, in which they make a deal because they need goaltending, think of Edmonton as an example of a team that needs goaltending, but they don't have the resources to be able to go all in on a guy like Saros. So they end up making a deal for a guy like Lankinen, but they don't have any cap space. So what do? They send you something that you don't want back, but then they have to give you something really, really good or something good. Maybe not really, really good, but good. And a team might do that. But as far as does Kevin Lankinen playing well mean anything for UC Saros, the answer is no, because they don't view those guys the same. I'll never forget years ago, Pekka Rinne was going through a little bit of a slump. And as he was going through that slump, Carter Hutton was the backup goalie. And Carter Hutton, I thought, played pretty well and got a start and had a shutout. And Laviolette sent him back out there because I guess the unwritten rule was if you have a shutout, you go the next game or something like that. And so Hutton had won 2 games in a row. And somebody asked Laviolette after the game if he was considering making Carter Hutton the lead dog over Pekka Rinne. And Laviolette, because Laviolette could be, he could have a rod up his tush at times, gave a very Laviolette answer, right? And I just remember at the time, and I was very inexperienced, I was young, and I'm like, you guys are crazy. If you think that there is any chance at all of the Predators making Carter Hutton the lead goalie over Pekka Rinne. The next day, Crispy walks up to me, and he goes, Stiller, I heard what you said yesterday. Let me just say this. As a coach, the last thing you want is if it hits the fan to have the goaltender mad at you. And we all had a good chuckle. But the reality is Pekka was the lead dog, and he always was going to be. And that's how it is here. Lankinen's doing a great job as a backup. I think he could be a backup option somewhere. But as far as, hey, Lankinen is playing really, really well. Kevin Lankinen, this could be our answer that we can trade Saros. And, Askarov can come up, but he can also work with Lankinen, and he can, whoa. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. I don't want to take away from the way that Lankinen played last night or played on Tuesday, because he did play really, really, really well. He played really well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. So the franchise tag window is open, and there is a franchise tag that has been made. Boy, a lot of you must have been upset because y'all never stopped shutting up about T Higgins, no matter how many times we talked about Cincinnati using the tag and you having to trade and all of that. Well, now it's official. They've got a thought on that. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Window Nation. They are online at windownation.com. I absolutely love Window Nation. I love Window Nation for a lot of reasons. Number one, they're experts. And they'll bring out, you get a free in-home estimate with Window Nation. They will bring an expert, somebody who's probably done somewhere around 11,000 window replacements, will show up to your home, and they know exactly how to test what they're looking for and everything else. I also love their selection. And they've got great pricing on their selection because it's not just, here's the most expensive option, but they've got options all along the way. And what I love about their prices is that they work hand in hand with the distributors. So instead of having to go get a distributor to send it to them and then mark it up, and they don't have to do that because they're all across the country. And so they've got one great deal. And it's unbelievable. And so the month of February is coming to an end. It is starting to get nice and warm outside, and Window Nation wants to help you out, especially as those windows take the heat, and all of a sudden those energy bills start going up. Window Nation not only wants to give you what they've been giving you, which is 50% off all window styles, plus an additional 10% off through the end of the month. 0 down, 0 payments, and 0 interest for 24 months. So they've been offering 50% off all window styles all month, and 0 down, 0 payments, and 0 interest for 24 months. Now, they want to give you an additional 10% off for the rest of the month. So you got to call now. But trust me, the other thing I like about Window Nation, they came to my home, and I asked them, look at my windows. Just give me the scoop. They did. They told me I had good windows. They didn't make any money off of showing up and telling me that I have good windows, which makes me believe and know that they're honest. And they'll be honest to you as well. That's Window Nation online at windownation.com. Again, 50% off all window styles, 0 down, 0 payments, and 0 interest for 24 months. And on top of the 50% off, an extra 10% off through the rest of the month. That's 866-90-NATION or windownation.com.
Of the franchise tags for this season has been applied. The Bengals officially using that on wide receiver T Higgins this morning. He's going to make $21.816 million this year if he plays on the franchise tag. He's been looking for a long-term deal. It's possible they still give him one. It's possible, we've seen guys get tagged and traded. Obviously, that's a potential outcome, but the Bengals have been really firm the last couple off seasons on trying to keep this group together, and franchising T Higgins, especially a week before the deadline, tells you they're still determined to do that.
Tag on T. Dominique, your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I love that they're going to keep him. It's unfortunate that he's not going to get the long-term commitment, but I think they should commit to him long-term. I get you don't want to have too much money tied up in one position group, but when you've had success playing that way, why try to be like anyone else? People would die for this amount of receiver talent. I think they need to pay Chase and Higgins and then try to figure it out elsewhere and let Joe Burrow, when he's healthy, go out there and make defenses pay.
Oh, wow. Good take, Dominique. I think they should just put all their money at wide receiver and quarterback and don't worry about anything else. So T Higgins got the franchise tag. And I think there's a lot of Titan fans that kept seeing all year long T Higgins, well, they were told $100 million in cap space, which actually isn't true. It never was, but everybody just kept saying it, so it kept getting repeated. Now, I think the Titans do have over $100 million in cash they can spend. And because everybody has a phone now, they can just Google whatever they want. People tired of their football team sucking as bad as the Titans sucked this past year probably Googled in there, top free agents. We need the top free agents, Jared. And T. Higgins' name kept coming up. So everybody kept saying T. Higgins, T. Higgins, T. Higgins, T. Higgins. I get it. I never really thought T. Higgins was realistic as far as a signing was concerned. But I certainly thought that T. Higgins was realistic as far as a trade was concerned. Then at the Senior Bowl, Duke Tobin, who runs their personnel department in Cincinnati, came out and said, Jamar is a big part of our plans moving forward, and we're going to try to do whatever we can to keep Jamar, and he's a great player, and we love him, and blah, blah, blah. And then when it came to Higgins, he said, we'll see. That's not a ringing endorsement. Not when it's compared to what he was saying about Chase. And I know Solomon Wilcots kept saying at the Super Bowl, we're not going to trade him, and I'm like, let's again take a look at the math. Joe Burrow makes a fortune, okay? The Bengals, the cheap Bengals, we've talked about for years, the Bengals were the franchise that everybody else in the NFL laughed at because of how poor they were. The Bengals, if they sign Jamar Chase, that will cost them $30 million a year. And it'll probably cost them $33, $34 in cash in year one. If you take a look at their payroll and you add $30 million to it, or whatever it ends up being for Jamar Chase in terms of that first year's money, that would put them in the, I think, top 5 of payrolls in the league. Add in $21 million for T. Higgins, and you're at number 2 in the league behind Cleveland. Now, do you really think that the Brown family in Cincinnati, that they're going to be the second highest spenders of payroll in the NFL? You know better than that. So, what's happened is T. Higgins has been tagged. And if you noticed, T. Higgins got tagged before anybody else, right? So everybody else who might get tagged, they're trying to work out a deal right now. Why tag Higgins so soon? Because the Bengals are going to the Combine to talk about whether or not they're going to trade T. Higgins with these other teams. In fact, I think it is more likely than not that Cincinnati is going to trade T. Higgins. So what does that mean for the Titans? Is T. Higgins worth the 38th overall pick and a $120 million contract? That's the question. Now, you can finagle pick swaps and things like that with Cincinnati in order to try to make the deal more fair. And A.J. Brown was worth worth the 16th overall pick, because you got the 18th pick and the 100th pick, and you add those up, and it equals the 16th overall pick in the draft. That's what A.J. Brown was worth. T. Higgins is not as good as A.J. Brown. So what is T. Higgins worth? And then the other side of the coin is, what is T. Higgins worth to the other 30 teams in the league? Because let's say the Titans want T. Higgins and they want to give T. Higgins a contract, but the Titans are only willing to part with 38 and somebody else is willing to part with 24. Well, they're going to get T. Higgins for 24. The problem is you're at 7 and you're not moving the 7th overall pick for T. Higgins. You would be stupid if you did something like that. So I think the reason why he got tagged was simply so the Bengals could walk into these trade negotiations and they could get a deal done at the start of the league year. How do you get the deal done at the start of the league year? Everybody knows what his salary is. $21 million. And then you can work out a deal with him and you can extend him. But we're going to go to the Combine, and everybody's going to know T. Higgins will not be a free agent because we've already tagged him. So I don't think it closes the book on the Titans acquiring T. Higgins. It just changes what you have to do in order to acquire T. Higgins. And I would not give up either the 7th or 38th picks for T. Higgins straight up, knowing that I'd have to give him a $120 million contract. Because I do wonder, at 38 in a deep receiver draft, can you draft your own T. Higgins? And is T. Higgins really a true number one? I know Justin Jefferson, who's going to be on the trade market, maybe. I know Justin Jefferson is a true number one. Jamar Chase is a true number one, and that's why Cincinnati's not going to let him leave. Is Higgins a true number one, or is he the second guy with a true number one and an incredible quarterback, and that makes him more important? And those are the questions you got to decide. Because if you're the Titans and you say, okay, let's take Joe Alt with the 7th pick, and then we think that the receivers that'll be available at 38 are going to be good, but we don't think they're going to be that good, and we, in our own internal scouting, think that Higgins is a number one, then make the deal and give him the contract. But those are the decisions that have to be had. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. It is the Combine week that has started. Tomorrow's when it really gets going. The Titans are going to have Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon speak. And coming up next, there is this new sentiment surrounding the Combine, and I hate it. We'll get to that next. Nashville's best deal this week is 312 Pizza Company. 312 Pizza Company serves the best pizza in town as well as Chicago-style eats like Chicago dogs, Italian beef sandwiches, and more. Get half off a $30 gift card to 312 Pizza Company at thegamenashville.com/deals while supplies last. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios here today on the program. It is Combine Week in the National Football League. Now, I don't think they're doing any of the televised Combine stuff, like the stuff that you guys watch. I don't think they're doing that until Saturday. I think Saturday is when they're doing the 40 running and everything else, and I think that's a little stupid. I would rather them do that earlier in the week, like Thursday, Friday, but whatever, that's their choice. Tomorrow, Brian Callahan will meet with the media. Rand Carthon will meet with the media. I believe Rand Carthon will be on Chasing Big Joe tomorrow, and when Caroline said Brian Callahan at 11 o'clock, was she talking about a press conference, or is he going to join their show at 11 o'clock tomorrow? Do we know that?
I assumed press conference, but I don't know that.
Okay. So, Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon will speak tomorrow. And thank God Brian Callahan will speak tomorrow, because it means that Brian Callahan will be at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Because there is now a trend amongst the guru coaches. They're the ones leading the way here. The guru coaches to skip the Combine. Sean McVay is going to skip the Combine. Matt LaFleur is going to skip the Combine. Robert Saleh is going to skip the Combine. What a piece of crap coach he is, by the way. He sucks. Did you read that Athletic article about the Jets? Robert Saleh. Oh, well, if Robert Saleh does it, then everybody should do it. Mike McCarthy is going to be skipping the Combine. Kyle Shanahan may skip the Combine. And so it is now in vogue for coaches to skip the Combine. Caroline, by the way, just texted me and said Brian Callahan is joining the show.
Perfect.
Tomorrow at 11 o'clock. So again, Rand tomorrow on Chasing Big Joe, Brian Callahan on Caroline, Willie, and D. Mace. So it is now in vogue for some of these coaches to skip the Combine. Well, we can watch the tape at home. I don't need to sit there with my stopwatch and count the 40 time. That's not really what the Combine is about. Yes, somebody's 40 time is important. We learned that when we used to work every day with an old general manager who told us, no, it matters. But as far as what a head coach does at the Combine, the most important thing, it's getting to know the players. It's getting to spend time with the players in the 15-minute sessions that you're given. It's meeting with agents at the Combine and being able to decipher, hey, I got to get back with Rand on this one, but I think that's the kind of guy we could be interested in. And then getting back with Rand and saying, hey, he wants to be a Titan. I think that's important. I also think, and I know that, again, it's not a tangible, huge benefit. But if you're a coach and you know how to work the media, the Combine can be very important for you. I think Rand Carthon made a rookie mistake last year at the Combine when the Titans went there trying to gauge the value of Derrick Henry, and so they quote-unquote shopped him. And what that allowed was for another general manager or another coach to use that nugget of information in a discussion with Mike Silver, a very veteran reporter, who, of course, put that in his column. Because that's what a lot of these relationships are. I give you, you give me. We're just having a chat. Well, why are we wasting our time talking? Because you might have information and I might have information. That's why. So when I see a coach is not going to the Combine, I think it's because of one of two reasons. Number one, your team doesn't value your opinion on player selections. Just think of Mike McCarthy with the Cowboys. Jerry, Steven, Will McClay, they don't give a rat's ass what Mike McCarthy thinks. And they shouldn't, because they do a good job drafting players. They do a much better job than they do with Big Mike drafting the players, because they've been doing a great job drafting players since Coach Clapper, Jason Garrett was the coach. So they don't need Mike McCarthy there. He just gets in the way. And the other reason why coaches may not go to the Combine is because, well, they're lazy and arrogant and they don't want to go. Some people, this will be surprising to you, some people during their off seasons, which, again, for the old school guys, for the grinders, there is no off season in football. But for, I think, kind of the more younger coaches, I think they're getting into the office around 7, 8 a.m. every day. I don't know if they're getting into the office at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, the way that the old grinders used to. And so the idea of Sean McVay leaving his gorgeous wife and new family out in Los Angeles to go to Indianapolis, I'll pass. I certainly think that's part of the equation. Because, again, the combine may not be the greatest asset, and every second of every day, as far as the combine is concerned, is not meaningful information. But there's a lot that can be gathered by going to the combine. That is, unless your team doesn't value your opinion on picking these players. They don't care. Yeah, I know Coach thinks he's okay, but what does Coach know? And I'm reminded of a situation in a behind-the-scenes documentary on the 1994 NFL Draft. The 1994 NFL Draft was the draft where Mel Kiper Jr. and Bill Tobin, who was running the Colts, got into it because they didn't take Trent Dilfer, and Mel criticized them, and he went on TV with Chris Mortensen, and he said, who in the hell is Mel Kiper Jr. in a way? You know, and that just took off and everything else. But there was behind-the-scenes video of the Kansas City Chiefs inside their war room, picking between 3 running backs who all had a similar grade. And Carl Peterson was the general manager at the time, and he had the final call. And he and Marty Schottenheimer, the coach, and the vice president of player personnel went in a room, and they talked it out. On the clock, 3 running backs. They didn't know who to take. They ended up taking Greg Hill out of Texas A&M. But they were talking about the 3 guys. And they turned to Marty Schottenheimer and they said, okay, out of the 3 guys, if you had to pick one, who would you want to pick? Because as the vice president of player personnel said to Carl Peterson, hey, at the end of the day, he's the guy who's got to coach him. So we can sit here and say, this guy is a better fit for our team. This guy, had he not got injured, would have gone higher. This guy. But the guy who's ultimately making the dishes says, I prefer this running back, he's the guy who's got to coach him. That's not nothing. So what we live in today is a society of people working from home and people doing meetings on Zoom, and it's different. But the idea of a coach not going to the combine, I cannot get on board with that. Every single college player that is going to be at the top of these boards is going to be there. Every single one of these big-time college players, you will get an opportunity to meet. It might be for 15 minutes. It might be an interaction that you see between him and another player on the field while they're waiting in line for their drills. But it matters. And so when I see these coaches, when I see Robert Saleh sitting there saying, oh, no, I'm too busy to go to the combine. What is Robert Saleh doing that is so important that he can't make it to the combine to be able to talk to Joe Douglas about the players he likes or doesn't like? And you know the answer to that. And so I know the Titans are trying to be like all these new we're smarter than everybody else organizations, and that's great. And analytics and apparently receiving the football in overtime of the playoffs and everything else, that's what they want to be. But I'm glad that they're not going to have the arrogance of saying, no, we don't need to go to the combine. We don't need the coach to go to the combine, because I think that's absurd. And every time I think about people taking this stuff lightly, I always think back to the fact that San Francisco picked second in 2017. They did not draft a quarterback. Ian, do you know who their starting quarterback to begin the 2017 season was for the San Francisco 49ers? This was the first year of Shanahan and Lynch.
It doesn't come to me quickly, no.
Brian Hoyer was the starting quarterback.
He's terrible.
And they ended up trading in the middle of the year. They ended up trading for Jimmy Garoppolo, and then he sat the bench for a couple of games behind C.J. Beathard, and then he took over. They ended up trading the second overall pick to the Chicago Bears so that the Bears could move from 3-2 to take Mitch Trubisky. San Francisco, meanwhile, took Solomon Thomas with the third overall pick. It's come out that San Francisco didn't do their homework on any of these quarterbacks because Kyle Shanahan just assumed that after the year was over, he'd sign Kirk Cousins from Washington. You know who was in that 2017 draft, Ian?
Who's that?
The guy who's won 2 Super Bowls from San Francisco. If Kyle Shanahan had done his homework and had realized, hey, this Mahomes might be the real deal, and we've got the second overall pick, and Cleveland's going to take Myles Garrett, and so if he had done his homework on the quarterbacks and he had seen what Andy Reid saw, think that might have changed those 2 Super Bowls a little bit? So even though you can be really good like Kyle Shanahan is, you can still be arrogant. And I can't think of anything that these coaches would be doing on a daily basis that would be more beneficial than being at the combine. I'm just going to tell it how it is. So I think this is total arrogance. I do not think it is about efficiency. I think it is about laziness. Or in the case of some coaches like Matt LaFleur, they're just not involved in the decision-making process, so why bother? But this idea that coaches don't need to be at the combine, if you coach for me and you try to come to me and you try to say you didn't think you should go to the combine, I'd say screw you. That's what I would say. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. Now, the Titans are taking their coaches to the combine. Because, again, Brian Callahan will join Caroline Willie and D. Mace live from the combine tomorrow. But I think Rand Carthon needs his coaches at the combine. And I'll explain why. We'll do that next, and we'll get into your phone. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 here on the program. That's 615-737-1025. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tomorrow night as Vanderbilt men's basketball takes on Arkansas on the road. Pregame at 7:30, tip-off at 8. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com.
my answer is biased. But we're hearing coaches aren't showing up more and more. They're not showing up. They're staying home.
Really?
Yeah. Head coaches just aren't coming. Go ahead, ask the question, Chris. I know it. I could sense it. I feel it from over there.
Does the combine still matter?
Okay. Combine still matters. It will always matter. It never won't matter. Because lost amongst the conversation of will the top flight quarterbacks throw, and head coaches aren't coming because they could do more work at home, and the interviews that they have with the kids are just 15 minutes long, and it's speed dating, and it doesn't, give these guys enough time to make a decision anyway, even though forget the fact that they could still show up and chat with them at their pro days and then invite them in to their facilities, and a lot of these guys are going to come and do that. I take it that the coaches aren't showing up. It's because the broadcast is so damn good.
I do
I'm
think
not
that's
joking.
a factor. Yeah,
I'm not joking.
Yeah, I think that's kind of.
I have been told by coaches saying I get more from watching it at home than I do sitting there with my notepad and my 40-yard dash stopwatch.
Rich Eisen saying, hey, I think my NFL Network broadcast is so good that there's no need for me to go to the combine. Let me just say this. Rich says he wasn't joking. I think he kind of was joking. But let me just say this. Bull crap. There is no way you get more off of TV than you do from being at the combine where you can meet with the players. There is no way you can get more off of TV. I'm sorry. It's just like going to a game, right? I remember a game a couple of years ago. The Titans are playing the Texans. It was a big divisional game in 2019. And the Titans are driving before the half. And in a 2-minute drill, A.J. Brown calls for a sub. And he puts his hand up like, hey, I need a sub. And he goes out and Khalif Raymond comes in. And the next day I said on the radio, I thought Vrabel should have called timeout because he had all three. And he should have called timeout. And he should have allowed A.J. to catch his breath and then put A.J. back out there. And Floyd laughed and said, ha, 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 get your fat ass in shape. That's what you need. Ha, ha, ha. When it came to that. But I wouldn't have been able to see that if I wasn't at the game. They don't show those things on TV. So I don't want to hear this. I could do better watching it on TV. It's not like they put these coaches up in the 800 level like they're trying to watch the Final Four in one of those football domes. No. I mean, this is ridiculous. This isn't golf where you can only be at one hole at one time, whereas on TV, it can be shot, 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 shot. So I don't want to hear that excuse. I think if coaches don't go to the combine, it's because either their general managers don't want them there because they'll get in the way and they don't value their opinion, or because the coach is lazy. And I think in the case of McVay, he'd rather stay in Los Angeles than travel all the way to Indianapolis. Now, I think it's great that Brian Callahan is going to be there. And I think that if I'm Rand Carthon, I need Brian Callahan at the combine. But the guy I really need at the combine is Bill Callahan. And here's why. If I'm Rand Carthon and I bust on the 7th overall pick, I'm fired. Like, there's no way around this, okay? I'm sure that there'll always be an excuse because there always is an excuse when a guy gets fired, just like I'm sure Jerry Stackhouse has an excuse for why Vanderbilt's not very good right now. But at the end of the day, if he had taken the job and you sat down with him and you had said, hey, you're not going to make an NCAA tournament for 5 years, he would have looked at you and said, well, I guess I'm getting fired. So Rand Carthon knows if he busts on the 7th pick, he's fired. And sure, they could nail the 7th pick. As a left tackle, no harm, no foul. They also could nail a 7th round pick. And they could draft the tackle in the 7th round, and that guy could be John Runyon. But we also know that's not very likely. So the reality is, if I'm going to draft Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu with the 7th overall pick, my job's riding on that pick. And I want and I need Bill Callahan's opinion. I want his opinion about the person. I want to make sure Bill Callahan, who has grown these offensive line rooms for 30 years, I want Bill Callahan to interact with the kid, to say, I think this kid could fit in my ideal offensive line room. I want Bill Callahan to watch these kids to know, hey, this kid never gave up in the drills. This kid's got maybe a little bit of an attitude. I didn't like his body language. I want Bill Callahan to be scouring all of this. And not only do I want Bill and Brian doing that, and I need their opinions, and they're trying for collaboration. So if you're going to collaborate, those opinions need to be informed. But I also want Bill Callahan and Brian Callahan talking to other coaches. That's another part of this that, again, it's not on Rich Eisen's broadcast, although they will show sometimes. These coaches sitting there in their suites in Indianapolis talking to one another. But there's a lot of gossiping and brotherhood and all that stuff that goes into this. I remember at the Combine in 2019, we had run into Matt Patricia. And Floyd and Patricia had worked together in New England. And Patricia saw Floyd and was like, Floyd, oh my God, like, dude, what's up, man? And we were talking with Patricia, and Floyd was like, hey, come on the show. We'd love to have you. And Patricia was like, yeah, dude, hey, just text me, and we'll work something out. So Floyd texts Matt Patricia. Matt Patricia says, hey, I really don't want to go all the way over to Radio Row. Can you guys come to me? And I'll send somebody. And so the Lions PR guy comes and grabs me and Floyd, and we walk like all these back corridors, and we end up in the Lucas Oil Stadium, and we go up to this suite. And I've told this story on the radio before, but I think it bears repeating, especially as we are at the Combine stage of the year. But so we take this elevator up to whatever floor the suites are on, right? Like suite level 1 or whatever it was. And we get off the elevator, and there's a suite, and I think it's the Patriot suite. And before we walk into the Patriot suite, the old man turns around, and he gives me a look. And you guys may have never met this man before, but I bet you know exactly what that look probably meant. And so I felt like, and this was when the Patriots were still kings, I felt like I got invited to the most exclusive country club as a guest. Because I'm up there, and it's Josh McDaniels, Matt Patricia, Nick Caserio, Monty Ossenfort, Dean Pease, Romeo Crennel, all these great Patriot coaches of the dynasty are all hanging out there, all having a good time there. And as we walk in there, to kind of take Patricia to the side to tape with him for a second, as we walk in there, they're all like, Floyd! And everybody's like, hey, man, how you been? And every time they say, how's Sally doing? And he'd say, mean as a snake, ha, ha, ha. And they all laugh about it. And, again, I was just kind of like, I think I was 29 years old at the time. I'm up there. I'm like, oh, my God. I'm hanging out with the Patriot, bro. I'm at the country club. So, anywho, my whole point is that with that, there is a network angle and aspect. How many friends in coaching does Bill Callahan have over 40 years of doing this? So if Bill Callahan's talking to one of his buddies, it probably comes up in conversation. Hey, did you see the Penn State tackle? Did you see his feet? When he did that drill, he crossed over. Oh, Bill, we sat down with him last night, and that kid, he is a freaking snob and a half. That's important. Knowing who said it, knowing if you trust what they say or not, all of that stuff's important. So when I see all these coaches ducking the Combine, thinking that they don't need to go, I'm like, screw you guys. There is valuable stuff to be had at this Combine, and I am glad that Brian Callahan, Bill Callahan, I'm glad they'll be there. And if Rand Carthon really wants to collaborate the way they say they want to collaborate, they need everybody there at the Combine. So I'll just tell you right now, I'm glad they're going. I think it's a good thing that the Titans aren't trying to follow what everybody else is doing. One texter says, and our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, why does it seem these coaching trends are on a curve? Like it's the new cool thing to do to not go to the Combine, but then in a couple of years, someone will ask why the coaches don't go anymore, and it will be groundbreaking when a coach goes and gains a lot of information from going. I agree. Let me just say this. Andy Reid will be going to the Combine every year until Andy Reid retires. Why? Because it's important. That's why. 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. More of your phones. Plus, the other part about the gossiping is that the media all goes to the combine. And there's a lot of media gossip that comes from the combine. And coming up next, there's one nugget of information that I am fascinated about that maybe we're already starting to see get out there and what it means for one legendary Titan. We'll do that coming up next. White Bison, they're your local coffee shop. Be like me. Download that twice daily White Bison app. It is fabulous. That's right. And if you want your local coffee shop, you need to go to White Bison. Stay swarming cozy with their honey-based drinks like the Cinnamon Beehive Latte, the Iced Honey Nut Macchiato, and the Vanilla Rooibos Tea Latte. White Bison is your local coffee shop with food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. And you can download the Twice Daily app and order ahead. When you download the Twice Daily and White Bison app, you can enroll in the rewards program, and you can place orders on the go anytime and automatically earn on every purchase. That's what I do. I love my Twice Daily app. I mean, I've been using it like there's no tomorrow with the Twice Daily app. I love it. Download the app and order ahead. Earn rewards and get one free coffee every time you buy 7. That's part of White Bison's rewards. Buy 7, get 1 free. That's White Bison and Twice Daily, fresh all day. What do you think about the future between Derrick Henry and the Titans?
I would love to see him stay. I think he would be a great, continued addition, not addition, but for Brian, for the father, for Coach Callahan to come in as well and work with that run game. I think it's really important to maintain. Now, I know there's going to be people out there knocking on the door, but for how much, right? What's going to be the situation?
But I just don't think there's going to be a lot of money. I think he's going to get out there thinking he's going to get $8-10 million bucks, and it's going to be like 1 year up to 4.5.
It's going to be a Dalvin Cook situation, right? Maybe. I'm not saying that they were. I'm just saying, is it going to be that? What did Dalvin get? $7 million?
Something like that. Well, up to.
Up to. Yeah, it's going to be an up to situation.
Absolutely.
I would love to watch you guys or see you guys continue to have him there because I think it's important. I think it would be great if he took a deep breath and realized he wanted to play for this situation. That's what I think personally. It would be nice to have him there.
You guys, I'm not on the team, Thomas. That's okay. Thomas Dimitrov, former NFL general manager with us at the Super Bowl. So this is a big week for Derrick Henry because there's two reasons why. Number one, agents are going to be meeting with teams and tampering is going to be happening aplenty. And Derrick Henry will be a free agent. This, according to Adam Schefter, no franchise tags are coming for running backs, which means that Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, and Austin Eckler will all be free agents, free to shop themselves to the highest bidder. In fact, there's an article at Pro Football Talk in which the headline says Raiders want Josh Jacobs back, but not at the $14.1 million franchise tender. So quite frankly, these teams, they don't want to pay running backs. That's why they're not tagging them. By the way, I would love to know that running back Zoom that they had. I wonder how they're feeling now. Hey, remember when we all talked last year upset about how we weren't getting any money? What are we going to do this year? And that is where they are. So what I'm fascinated by is the combine gossip that will come out because I don't know what the market for Derrick Henry is going to be. Will there be teams that are excited to talk to Derrick Henry's agents to sit down and say, hey, we think that him as a battery ram on this offense would be exactly what we need. And so Derrick Henry's agents can report back to him and say, hey, man, we talked to the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Ravens, the Dolphins, the Chargers, and I mean, they love you. The Chargers, they see you as kind of the perfect piece in order to go in with Joe Alt, who they're going to draft in the first round, or Roma Dunze, who they're going to draft in the first round, and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Justin Herbert, and they want you big time. Or are Derrick's agents going to report back to Derrick and say, hey, man, like $4 million might be the best we can get? Because they'll have a pretty good idea. Again, tampering aplenty is about to start. So on one hand, I think there could be a team or two that looks at Derrick Henry and says, man, he played in front of that crappy offensive line in Tennessee, and we all know how bad it was. And he was, saddled with a young quarterback, and the team wasn't very good, and the scheme wasn't great. And so we still can get the best out of Derrick Henry. But on the other hand, Derrick Henry's also a 30-year-old running back who doesn't catch the ball out of the backfield. So will there be teams that look at him and value him at all, and not only value him, but also value him in comparison to Saquon Barkley, who is younger, Austin Eckler, who is a better receiver, Josh Jacobs, who does everything that Henry can do, except he doesn't have the amount of carries that Derrick Henry has, and so on and so forth. So if I'm Derrick Henry, I'm waiting this week, and I'm seeing what my agents tell me, because the Titans have gone out of their way, whether it was Rand Carthon at that disastrous end-of-the-year press conference that he held where he said the door is never closed, or Brian Callahan, who came on this show and said he values Henry's leadership and he is not turning away from Derrick Henry. If you get out of this thing and you don't see that anybody's really interested, you need to go to the Titans. And you need to tell the Titans, hey, I want to be back. What's a deal that makes sense? What's a fair deal? Knowing that Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan are going to have to treat Henry with respect, both financially and as far as his stature in the locker room is concerned. And the other thing that makes this a very, very big week for Derrick Henry is how do the running backs test? Most of these drills, and I would agree that the underwear Olympics, as people like to call the combine, a lot of these drills might be overrated. Now, I know this. I used to go to the combine with a guy who drafted players in the NFL, unlike you boo-hooers that are like, I don't care in a T-shirt and shorts what they look like, because he did care. Now, I'll never forget, we walked by Damian Harris, the old running back from Alabama, doing the bench press. And as we walked by, because the bench press was literally right up against where Radio Row was in the convention center, and we were walking like towards Radio Row. We had, I had my backpack on, and he was walking behind me, and as Damian Harris is doing the bench press, I just hear Floyd turn over and say, "Lock out, dumbass!" Talking about locking out his arms on the bench press, which I always got a kick out of. And I remember asking him one time, I said, do you care about this? Like, do you care about, Damian Harris, 17 reps at 225? He said no. But, that guy from Wisconsin who benched it 40 times? Yeah, I care about that. It's like, got it. So these drills do matter a little bit. But as far as the on-the-field stuff at the combine is concerned, the position that I think it probably translates to the most is either running back or receiver, especially running back. And so if the teams get to Indianapolis and they realize through the testing that there is going to be a deep running back draft where teams can take guys on day 3 and those guys will be able to contribute right away, just like Isaiah Pacheco of the Chiefs has, that might be another reason why a team is saying, well, I'm not going to pay Derrick Henry $6 million. Draft somebody in the 5th round. And running back's a position where you can do that. You can draft a guy in the 5th round, and you can live with yourself for having done that. So this is a big week for Derrick Henry. Like, about whether or not there's going to be a market for him, and what do the backs and the draft look like? Because the last thing that I think Derrick Henry wants to do, I only think there's so much money to go around for the running backs, and maybe one or two of these guys is going to sign. And one of these guys is going to be really smart, whether it's Eckler or Jacobs or Henry or whomever. And they are going to call a contending team, Pollard, and they are going to say, hey, what's the going rate? If you want Austin Eckler on your team, how much do you want him for? And the team says to Austin Eckler, we'll do 5. Make it 6, we got a deal. If you're going to sit there, cross your arms and say, well, last year I played for $12 million and you may not have a job in July. And that goes for Derrick Henry too. So as the gossip mill and the rumor mill and everything else continues and tampering starts, and we'll see as far as the top free agents are concerned, like how much they're tucking and what they're saying and what they're doing, as much as that, maybe kind of a behind-the-scenes thing or maybe about kind of bigger fish, I certainly think if I'm Derrick Henry and my agents are telling me, hey, dude, there's not really much of a market. The Cowboys said, hey, we'll be in touch, but we don't know. The Ravens say that they're probably going to draft or go with Gus Edwards. The most they'd offer is $3 million. We just really didn't see a market out there. Then sometimes I think clients don't like hearing that because they immediately pick up the phone and fire the agent. I'll go get another agent. But I think Derrick Henry's smart enough and self-aware enough to say, okay, then what do we need to do? Well, we need to call the Titans. Because the Titans understand that if Derrick Henry, who is making $12.5 million a year, that if Derrick Henry's going to come back, it's going to be around $8 million just because you can't give Derrick peanuts. Can't do it. And that might be something they learn this week. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Add that to the list. Plus, now that it's combine season, guys' stocks are going to rise, they're going to fall. Sometimes it's a narrative, sometimes it's bull crap. Sometimes it's legit. There's one guy I'm rooting for this week at the combine, and if you like the Titans, you should be rooting for him too. We'll get to that next. Now, let me just tell you, it's not Joe Alt. It's not Olu Fashionow. It's not Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, Johnny Joe, Jared Stillman. No. It's one very particular player. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love my friends at Hiller. They are the best. It's love season. It's love month. Even though Valentine's Day is past us, that doesn't mean it's not love month. And love is in the air. Find your perfect match this month with Hiller. Get a free UV light when you purchase select new HVAC systems. Get a free whole home surge protection when you buy a new whole home generator. Or get 50% off of a descaler when you buy a new tankless water heater. You'll never be more in love with your home. Find your perfect match at happyhiller.com. Again, that's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. My guys, they take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. That's Hiller. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
Most difficult player, in my opinion, to evaluate and put a grade on. That is J.J. McCarthy. I am all over the place on JJ.
Yes.
Love
Thank you for bringing
everything
this up.
about his makeup. Love the way I know he's going to test athletically because I love I love what he did, how he responded in that national title game. Tough guy, super competitive, athletic as all heck. He's going to test out really athletic at the Combine Pro Day. Does he have a howitzer? No, but can he make every throw? Yes. But he didn't have to carry the team. And you wanted the wow moments. I saw a couple in the national title game, but it wasn't something you saw over a 4-quarter period. He jumped out as a franchise quarterback. To me, JJ, I'm at 23 on my big board, 23, 24 area field. I don't think I can move him any higher. How do you feel about JJ? He, to me, is the most, because he's a quarterback, and that's the most important position in all sports. He's the toughest player to put a ranking on.
There you go. That was Mel Kiper Jr. on the First Draft podcast talking about, I don't know what to think or how to feel about J.J. McCarthy. And let me just say this. Go J.J. I am rooting for J.J. McCarthy. He is the one player at the Combine that I am looking at, that I am thinking about, that I am caring about. Everybody else, how much does it really matter to me about how this guy runs or that guy? I mean, I'll care about it when it comes to the Titans, but I don't care. Roma Dunze is going to run. I don't care how Roma Dunze does, because if Roma Dunze does well, then that means he probably goes higher. If Roma Dunze doesn't do well, then that means that he probably goes lower. But I want to know what I'm getting when it comes to these guys. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. is not doing any of the testing or anything else, but again, I have no allegiance to any of these players. Even the guys that went to Louisville, I don't care. Des Fitzpatrick went to Louisville, and he sucked. And so I was glad to see him go from the Titans, just like I'm rooting for Will Levis, who went to Kentucky, because I don't care where you went to college. So all I worry about is what's best for the Titans. And J.J. McCarthy at Michigan having a great combine would be great for the Titans. Now, here's why. I think we all believe that the NFL draft is going to have quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. And that makes sense. So you're not going to have a shot at any of those quarterbacks, nor does it seem like you probably want to draft a quarterback right now because you're evaluating whether or not Will Levis is going to be your guy. But there is nothing that stimulates trade talks on draft night like a good young quarterback and a potential franchise guy does. And all the teams behind you, Atlanta at 8 needs a quarterback. The Jets at 10, they have Aaron Rodgers, but they need a long-term option. Minnesota at 11, Denver at 12, Las Vegas at 13. All need young quarterbacks. You could even make an argument, New Orleans at 14 needs a young quarterback. Seattle at 16. It could be argued, needs a young quarterback. But if J.J. McCarthy is, as Mel Kiper Jr. just said right there, only the 21st or 24th or whatever it is that Mel said, if he's only that player, then the Minnesota Vikings are not going to give you an arm and a leg to move up from 11 to 7 in order to jump the Atlanta Falcons at 8 to be able to draft J.J. McCarthy. But if J.J. McCarthy, who was a serial winner in college at Michigan, never lost outside of the TCU game last year, if J.J. McCarthy has a good combine throwing the ball, he could skyrocket up these boards. If he has good meetings with these teams, he could skyrocket up the board. And when people talk about next year's draft, and they do this a lot, so I try not to get too ahead of myself, because I feel like every year there's chatter of, oh, well, next year the quarterbacks aren't going to be very good. Although everybody was talking Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud for a while, there's a lot of chatter that the quarterbacks in next year's class are not going to be very good. I can't even off the top of my head think of who in college football is a good quarterback other than Quinn Ewers at Texas. So if you're Atlanta or if you're Minnesota or whomever, Denver, this may be your shot to go get a young quarterback if you don't want to be stuck with some retread quarterback. And McCarthy seems to be the guy who's fourth. And I just think that McCarthy, if he wows these guys in the meetings, in the interviews, he may skyrocket simply because of the position that he plays and the fact that he always won. It matters to those teams that the quarterback won. It's like a badge of honor that the young quarterback was successful. So as a Titan fan, and I'm not saying the Titans can afford to trade out to 19 or anything like that. I'm not taking anything off the table. But as a Titan fan this week at the Combine, the one guy that I think you all should root for, the one guy that I'm rooting for, J.J. McCarthy. Again, go J.J. Go have a great Combine. Get everybody talking about J.J. McCarthy. Get Atlanta interested in J.J. McCarthy. Get Denver interested in J.J. McCarthy. Get Minnesota interested in J.J. McCarthy. Get a bidding war going for J.J. McCarthy. I'm here for it. Because if there's a bidding war for a young quarterback and you've got the 7th overall pick and Atlanta's at 8, somebody might give you, because it's the quarterback, might give you next year's first. And if they're going to give you next year's first and they're going to put J.J. McCarthy at quarterback, I am here for it. Because next year's first from that team, in order to draft J.J. McCarthy, may be 3rd overall. So, again, you may have a college that you went to and you care about your guys and you want the guy from Arkansas because you're an Arkansas fan. You want the guy from Arkansas to do well. Couldn't care less about that stuff. The guys who do well will go up my boards for the Titans. The guys that don't, they'll go down. I don't have favorites. But I do have J.J. McCarthy because I want everybody else to want him. So go J.J. 615-737-1025. I didn't mean to get to some of your phones, and I guess I got too wrapped up in my excitement for what this week may look like for J.J. McCarthy. One texter into the text line, by the way, says that PFN, I don't even know who that is. PFN has the Titans signing
Pro Football Network, maybe?
Maybe. Has the Titans signing Jonah Williams from Cincinnati. Oh, no, Jared. I think the Titans are going to sign Jonah Williams, and I would sign Jonah Williams because Jonah Williams can play left tackle and he can play right tackle. So if you sign him and you don't get Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt with the 7th pick because they're off the board or whatever, then I would say, well, then I guess Jonah Williams can play left tackle. May not be very good at it, but he's certainly better than the guys you had there last year. One texter into the text line says, do you really think that J.J. McCarthy is ahead of Michael Penix? I do. I think teams are just that he's a winner. And I know Tim Tebow was a winner too, but I think there's something about J.J. McCarthy these guys are going to fall in love with. I mean, Rick Spielman swears up and down about J.J. McCarthy. So again, go J.J. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. The Predators, as predicted on this program, went on a heater on their latest West Coast trip. They are firmly in the mix for a playoff spot now. In fact, they are in the playoffs right now. Big week at home this week. What's it mean about the goalie at the trade deadline? What's it mean about the big trade deadline questions? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Speaking of the Predators, tomorrow is your opportunity to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Joe tomorrow at 8:45. By the way, where the hell was Joe this morning?
He was there during the 6 o'clock hour. He had some combine duties to attend to, I believe.
Monday morning
he is at the combine.
7 a.m.
Is it Central or Eastern there?
Monday morning at 8 a.m.?
Maybe. I don't know the schedule.
I mean, whatever. Preds Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. That's my agent. That's TJAndersonHomes.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios here on a Reaction Monday. And what we are reacting to is the heater that the Nashville Predators are on. And I think it is hilarious because I went to the Thursday night game, their last home game against the Dallas Stars, where they lost by a touchdown. And just how they got spanked and how much it sucked and how my head was literally in my hands. And I'm sitting there with my head in my hands and I'm like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. This is so bad. And in fact, somebody in front of me at the game turned around and said, Stillman, give them hell tomorrow. And I was like, I hear you. Now I'm flying with the team to St. Louis tomorrow, so I'm probably not going to throw everybody under the bus because, well, quite frankly, I don't want it to be welcomed, but I hear you. And that Friday, when we were on at 9 o'clock that morning, I was talking about how, Barry Trotz said this team was going to decide for him what they were going to be at the deadline, buyers, sellers, whatever it may be. And when you lose the way they lost to New Jersey and Dallas, you've given Barry Trotz exactly the answer that he needs to know. And then they go on the heater. In fact, it was the heater that I thought was coming. And so now a lot of people are thinking, well, what does this mean for the deadline now? Are they buyers now? And I don't know what their plans are. In fact, we will ask Barry Trotz tomorrow at 5 o'clock when he joins our program, as he always does on Tuesdays. And I'll say, has the road trip changed your outlook on the trade deadline? But I don't think it has. And I don't think it should. And here's why. Because while on one hand the winning means that everything is on the table in terms of excitement for the season and the last month of the year, and can this team make the playoffs, and with the goaltending that they had on this road trip and the way that they beat Vegas and they beat LA, and they maybe could give us one good competitive playoff series against Vancouver or somebody like that. Big picture, it doesn't really change anything for me with the Predators, right? The Predators are still in a rebuild. That's what they are. I don't look at this team and think cup contender, even though they just went on the road and they played great. I think they could knock off Vancouver in the first round of the playoffs. I wouldn't bet on it, but I think they could. I still don't think they're going to get through the Western Conference. They're not going to beat Edmonton in a playoff series if they were to play them in the second round. They're not going to beat Vegas once Vegas gets Eichel and Stone and all their guys back, even though they don't have a goaltender. They won't beat Vegas. They probably wouldn't beat Dallas or Colorado in a playoff series. So big picture, you're still not a cup contender. And so this road trip and the excitement of the season, and I am very excited about where all this is headed, but it doesn't really change anything long term. For instance, I don't think the Predators should be searching out for a one-year rental forward on the market, which is traditionally what buyers, quote unquote, do. And I still look at the potential moves they could make. Right? Barry Trotz has said, I either want to sign these UFAs or we may have to move off of them. Well, I don't think the Nashville Predators look at the decision to move on from Yakov Trenin as, oh, no, we can't move Trenin now. Yakov Trenin actually played okay on this road trip, but he's not going to determine your season one way or another. I still expect the Predators on defense, when it comes to their UFAs, to try to rid themselves of Carrier, Fabro, and or Tyson Barrie. Now, I don't think anybody wants Tyson Barrie, so he probably stays. And I don't know if anybody will want Fabro, and I'm sure people will want Carrier. So maybe you move Carrier and not Fabro because nobody wants Fabro, but then you call up Spencer Stastny. And that happens regardless of how much they win or lose for the next 2 weeks. Because the trade deadline is a week from Friday. So, again, they win a bunch. They're still going to want to move their UFA defenseman because one of those spots they're going to want to give to Spencer Stastny right now. The other one of those spots they're going to want to give long-term to Tanner Mullendijk. So the Predators look at it and say, hey, if we can get a 4th-round pick in exchange for Fabro, let's do it, because we're not going to re-sign Dante Fabro for next season. And I don't think that changes based upon what happened on the road trip. And then there's the goalie, the question that everybody's asking about. Well, Jared, now that they're competing this season, do you think that they could trade Saros? Or do you think that this means that the price for Saros has gone up? Or do you think that the way Askarov has played that the price has gone down? And I don't expect anything to change on the goalie front. I think the reality of the goalie position is Barry has set the price. I don't know who's called. We know that New Jersey has called. But let's say it's New Jersey and it's the Kings and Carolina and anybody else to add to that group, Ian?
I think those are a good 3 to start.
Okay. And Barry tells Carolina the price is the price. And he tells the Kings the price is the price. And he tells Tom Fitzgerald in New Jersey the price is the price. I want Quentin Byfield, L.A. Oh, we're not going to do that? Okay. That's the price. If Barry gets the price, he makes the trade. If Barry doesn't get the price, he doesn't make the trade. And I don't think that has anything to do with winning or losing. That has to do with him setting a value for Saros. And if he gets an offensive value that equals what he's willing to give up, then he'll do it. So I don't expect him to trade the goalie because I don't think anybody will meet Barry's astronomical asking price. The only thing that I think the winning maybe changed a little bit is Tommy Novak. Because Tommy Novak is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, and I think we can all agree that Tommy Novak has some redeemable qualities, especially in the offensive zone. He's not great in the dot, and he's not very good in his own end, including yesterday where he almost shot the puck on his own net, and Lankinen was surprised but ended up freezing the puck, thank God. And I don't even know what Tommy Novak was thinking when he did that, but you hear what I'm saying. But Tommy Novak's got offensive skill, and he can be on the power play. And so I want Tommy Novak on this team, and I want Tommy Novak back next year. But when I hear Elliot Friedman go on the midday show and say he thinks that Tommy Novak could get somewhere in the $4 million range, as in anywhere from 4.0 to 4.9, I spit out my water. Like, for Tommy Novak? Well, if you were for sure not making the playoffs, and Tommy Novak for sure was holding true to, I want $4.5 million, which is how much money Ryan O'Reilly makes, if that's the case, then I would have traded Tommy Novak. Now, I'm fine with keeping Tommy Novak, and Novak's probably worth a second on the trade market. I'm fine with keeping Tommy Novak in hopes that when Tommy Novak hits the market, he realizes $4 million isn't out there, and he comes back to the Predators. But again, that's the only one. And if I get offered something crazy for Novak, he's gone anyways. I don't care if we're competing. We're still in the middle of a rebuild. That's why you do it. So, as great as the immediate stimulus of tomorrow night's game being a big game, if the Predators went on this road trip and they got smoked like Adam Vingan thought they would, if the Predators went on the road and got smoked and they were clearly out of it like Arizona is right now, then tomorrow night's game would not be exciting. There would be no juice to it, and it would just be like, okay, well, they're rebuilding and playing out the string, but this is what we signed up for. And instead, it is a big game tomorrow night against Ottawa. And oh, baby, we got a march for the playoffs coming. And I'm excited. And my one competitive playoff round that I wanted so badly for the season is back in play. But big picture, I don't think anything changes with the Predators. And I'm okay with that. 615-737-1025. I see your phones in the text line. We'll get to them. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, I'm going to say it. I think I owe David Poyle an apology. A real apology for one very shrewd move that he made. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Jakob Silverberg for the Ducks. Goes goal line to Strome. Pass in front. Big save. Lankinen on Henrique. Rebound blocked by McDonough. Henrique in the slot. Lankinen got him with the left leg. Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist in their 52nd straight game together as the Preds' top line keep possession. Fabro center point. Rister blocked by Leeson. Ducks could be off. This could be a 3-on-1. Petrano on the left. Fabro back. Leeson in the middle. Shoots wide right. Loose in the crease. Kicked away by Lankinen with his left skate. Lankinen completely turned around to play the bouncy boards.
Kevin Lankinen, 2 big performances on this road trip too. What can you say about his game?
That's great. I mean, he's been great all year. I mean, he's been our backbone in some real tough road wins like tonight, early in the trip, and for us to get that kind of goaltending, obviously gives us a shot every night.
That was Andrew Burnett. Last night, Kevin Lankinen was fabulous in net against what's not a very good Anaheim Ducks team. But if it wasn't for Lankinen, I thought that would have been like 12-1 at the start of the third period. By the way, Chase apparently had Hal on, and he asked Hal, or he told Hal during the second period intermission, he said, I just talked to Jared, and Jared said it'd be 12-1 without Lankinen tonight. And Hal goes, well, that's a little extreme. We haven't listened to him yet. I don't think we should start now. And I did laugh out loud when I listened to that. But last night, Lankinen in net made 29 saves on 31 shots, .935 save percentage. I thought he was terrific. I mean, just absolutely terrific. And then they did score the 6-on-5 goal. I mean, there was a penalty kill early in the game, right before Anaheim scored their first goal, in which I thought it was a one-man penalty kill. Him. Because Anaheim possessed the puck the entire time in the Nashville zone, and the Predators didn't get a clear. They didn't do anything. I don't think they got a puck on the stick. And they ended up giving up a goal right after the power play was over. But again, I'm like, that's a one-man penalty kill. Lankinen. And there were times where all hell broke loose right before Forsberg scored. And I know Kiefer Sherwood made a good play to get that puck out of there. But that puck's that's already in the back of the net if it's not for Lankinen. So 2 years ago on this program, David Poile signed Kevin Lankinen while we were on the air. And you know me, the backup goalie of the Chicago Blackhawks, I don't know who that is. And so they signed Kevin Lankinen after Connor Ingram had played most of the year at Milwaukee, had gotten the call-up when UC Saros got hurt, and had actually performed okay in the playoff series against Colorado. Almost stole game 2 against the eventual Cup champions. And so I just figured Saros will be healthy next year. He'll be the goalie, and Connor Ingram will be the backup. And on they go. And instead, David Poile signed Kevin Lankinen to a 1-year, $2 million, 1.5, whatever it was, $1 million contract. And at the time they signed him, Robbie Stanley told me on the air, he says, yeah, that's not a good signing. Lankinen's not very good. And I already know I got Connor Ingram behind me, and I'm thinking, why would you do that? Why would you sign a guy? If Robbie and Adam are telling me he's not any good, why would you sign this guy when your backup goalie just played for you in the playoffs and was fine? And I think Connor Ingram's actually having a solid year for Arizona, or at least he is every time they play the Predators. So why would you do that? Oh, God, there goes David Poile again. And I mean, we ripped on David Poile for that decision. And I got to say this. The 2 years Lankinen has been with the Predators, he's been fabulous. He's been a great backup goalie. I think he's kind of like these offensive linemen that the Titans have tried to plug in as starters. I don't think he's a starter. And I don't think they can rely on Lankinen every single night. But if something were to happen to Saros, and they were to not have the option of Askarov, Ian, could you hear the knocking on the wood that I just did? Okay, thank you. If they don't have that and Lankinen has to go in there, he'll give you a shot. He's been wonderful. I mean, he has been excellent in net for the 2 years that they've had him. And I was surprised. I looked up his stats during the break. I was surprised to see that Kevin Lankinen has an under 9 save percentage because I thought he's been excellent this year. He must have just stunk at the beginning of the season. But I think Lankinen's been fabulous. And I thought he was wonderful last night. I thought he was great in the Vegas game on Tuesday, and I thought he was great last night. And so I got to apologize to David Poyle for that. Keith from Bowling Green texted in and said, Lazan with a question mark, because I teased the segment saying that I owe David Poyle an apology. No, not for Lazan. And I know Willie loves Jeremy Lazan, and Lazan's fine.
Leads the league in hitting.
Could give a rat's ass about that. I'm not trading a second-round pick for an expiring contract third-pair defenseman when I'm not even that good. I'd rather have my second-round pick, and I'd rather have drafted the Patras kid on the Bruins, who's a legitimate second-line center in the NHL. Then Keith and Bowling Green followed it up with Victor Arvidsson, question mark, Ryan Ellis, question mark, Tanner Jeannot, question mark. No. David Poyle owes me an apology on Ellis and Arvidsson because I was right about that, and he was wrong. But on the Lankinen thing, we got on David Poyle's tush, and I have to be honest and look back at it and call a spade a spade. And I'll tell you, I think that was a good, shrewd signing by David Poyle. And I don't think it's an accident that last year at the trade deadline, Lankinen was playing well, and they probably went to him and said, hey, we might be able to deal you, but we want you as our backup goaltender next year. And he said, I'm in, and they signed him to a new deal. And so I just thought Lankinen was wonderful last night. One texter says, Ottawa has underperformed compared to the talent on their roster. They have the potential to be a lot better than they are, and they have showed it in short spurts this season. And tomorrow night is definitely a trap game. And the Predators, if they come out slow, the Senators will take advantage. Oh, I'm scared to death of tomorrow night.
The first game of a road trip, coming home off a road trip, a long road trip, in which, I don't know, what time did they return from their flight last night?
I'm going to guess they probably landed like an hour ago.
So,
I'm going to guess they probably left at what?
I don't know
9 a.m. local time, which would have been 11 o'clock.
Did they leave in the morning? I wasn't sure if they left after the game or if they just flew today.
No, they spent the night.
Okay.
So I do know that. So I'm going to guess that they probably left at what, 10 a.m. local time or 9 a.m. local time?
Sounds
which would have
about
been
right, yeah.
11 o'clock here or noon, and it's a 4-hour flight. So they probably landed like an hour ago.
And you have to readjust your body for a couple of hours, rest, go for a morning skate, and then play tomorrow.
Treatment?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for a trap game tomorrow for sure.
Oh, I think tomorrow is the definition of a trap game. I mean, but then again, I thought that these games were trap games, like the ones against San Jose and Anaheim.
But I do think the texter is correct, and this team has better players than San Jose and Anaheim.
Somebody says Ottawa is 7-2-1 in their last 10. They've beaten Tampa Bay, Vegas, and Dallas in that 10-game stretch.
That I don't know as far as like their recent stretch, but I mean they do have some players who are better than San Jose and Anaheim. That's correct.
Yeah, San Jose and Anaheim stink.
Yeah.
The question is at home. And the other thing, too, is the Predators have sucked at home this year. Like, the Predators they've sucked. One texter says, who in their right mind would be in the market for Carrier? He stinks. He is a defensive liability, and an inopportune penalty waiting to happen. I think there's going to be teams that really want Carrier. I really do. I mean, you know what's crazy? I was thinking about this the other day. I was listening to Boston radio, and they were talking about how they need – now, I think they need a left-shot defenseman, and Carrier's a right shot, but they need a young defenseman, but they don't want to give up picks. DeBrusk is on an expiring contract. He's a second-line winger. I don't think that Jake DeBrusk usually gives them enough, but he could be a little extra offense for a team that needs a little offense, and I wouldn't rule it out. Again, they're both UFAs at the end of the year, so you don't really lose anything with that. Boston clears a little cap space doing that, which they probably want, which is part of the deal. Maybe you have them throw in like a third-round pick as a sweetener or something. But I think there's going to be – I think that Elliott said that Chychrun and Tanev are the two names?
Tanev and Noah Hannafin.
There you go. Boy, I like Noah Hannafin.
You've always liked Hannafin.
I like Noah Hannafin.
Yeah, they're two guys from Calgary.
So – he says once those guys are off the board, then we'll start to see the defense market kind of ramp up a little bit, and that's where Carrier and Fabro would come into the discussion. And I would just say this. I mean, if you're saying, hey, I can trade for either Carrier or Fabro, I'm trading for Carrier. I'm not trading for Fabro. Fabro, bless his heart, I mean, he hasn't gotten better since the day he showed up out of college. Not one scotch better. Did you see that turnover he had last night? I mean, just basically shot it into a 3-on-1.
Yes, that led to the 3-on-1.
Oh, my God.
It was a shot from the point. It got blocked. Yossi was kind of half pinched, and he couldn't get back, and it was a 3-on-1. Yeah.
Oh, my God. Come on. I mean, you're lucky that didn't go in the back of your net. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Tomorrow, Rand Carthon at 10:15 with Chase and Joe. Brian Callahan at 11 o'clock with Caroline, Willie, and D. Mace. And they're at the podium in Indianapolis. And I got 5 things I need to hear from both of them. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Rand is a tremendous person as far as an evaluator and the relationships he has around the league, and we really wanted to allow him to flourish in that role. Rand brings in a lot of good people, and that's something that this organization can be proud of first and foremost. I do know we have the right GM. You know, Rand Carthon's going to do some great things. He and Brian Callahan just kind of getting this team together. There's a lot of excitement around it. Hope is a powerful thing. We're hopeful that the fan base sees that and is excited about what we're doing. This is where Rand Carthon is just masterful. He has these relationships with these players in a way that most of us in the building don't. We're just so aligned, he and I, and Rand talks about that he has this acronym FIT, fast, instinctive, and tough football players, and I love that. I was like, man, I love that. That's kind of an identity of the team that you want to build. Yeah, Rand's a big part of that. Rand's the one that's really connected with those players in a way that probably no one else has in the building.
Chad Brinker just wants you to know, Rand's the best. Rand's so great. Rand. It's like Jan. But haven't heard much from old Rand outside of friendly, confined media interviews. He had that disastrous press conference the day that they fired Vrabel. But other than that, Rand Carthon, we haven't heard much out of Rand Carthon. Well, that changes tomorrow. Because tomorrow, Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan will take to the podium in Indianapolis. And at 10:15, Rand Carthon will join Chase and Big Joe. And at 11 o'clock, Brian Callahan will join Caroline, Willie, and D-Mace. And I got 5 things that I need to hear from both of them tomorrow because bullcrap season is over, and I want a vision for how this team is going to rebound and get competitive. And I know that Chad Brinker saying hope is a powerful thing. Well, give me something to hope about, okay? People want to get on me every time I talk about Rand Carthon because they think I have some sort of anti-Rand agenda. And I'm saying, have you listened to these press conferences? The ball didn't bounce our way. So let's put all of that in the rear view. Let's look through the windshield and let's talk about what I need to hear tomorrow, what I need to be asked, what I need to have answered. Should we start with Callahan or Carthon, Ian?
Let's start with Callahan.
Okay. First thing I need to know out of Brian Callahan. Where is Peter Skoronski playing next season? If the answer is guard, then say it. If you've decided that he doesn't have the length to play tackle or you don't think his foot speed is, if that's it, say it. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to hurt anybody's feelings. It's not going to make anybody mad, including me. But say it. Originally it was, well, we're going to try to play Peter at every position. And then they didn't. And that's great, but that makes you a liar. So when Vrabel and Rand said that, and then they didn't do it, that makes everything else that they say not valid anymore. So what I've decided is, if Brian Callahan gets up there tomorrow and he says Peter's a guard, then we all know, including Peter and everybody else, and on you go. I wouldn't have picked a guard at 11 overall, but that's a different discussion. And if the answer is guard, then the Titans need 2 tackles. If the answer from Brian Callahan is we'll see, then that tells me the Titans need to sign 1 tackle and 1 guard. And then he's saying, let's see what happens in the draft, right? If you draft Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu, then he plays left tackle, Peter plays left guard, the guard that you sign plays right guard, and the tackle you sign plays right tackle. Done. But you said on this show, Brian Callahan, when it came to Skoronski, that you would see, once you've got the staff in place, you would see whether or not you think he can play guard or tackle. Well, the staff is in place, so we should have an answer tomorrow.
Number 2.
The number 2 question for Brian Callahan is, does he want a great offensive line or does he want an offensive line that can get the job done? And does he want great receivers, pass catchers, tight ends, whatever? Because they will be faced with that choice. To a small extent in free agency, but in the draft, they will be faced with that choice. If you want an average offensive line, you can go buy that for the most part in free agency. Tackle might be a little bit of a question because there's probably only one or two guys on the market, and a couple of them are health risks. But you can probably find a way, with your dad as the offensive line coach, you can probably find a way to an average offensive line. If you want great pass catchers, you got to pay and you got to draft. You've got to sign Hunter Henry, who's not much of a run blocker, but is a much better receiving tight end than Chig Okonkwo. You've got to sign Calvin Ridley or Gabriel Davis or one of these guys in free agency. And then when you get put on the clock, and if it's Malik Neighbors and Roma Dunze, or if it's those guys in a battle with Joe Alt and Olu Fashionow, then you take the receiver. If you want a great offensive line, then you're going to have to build that through the draft. And that's going to take time. So which one would you prefer?
Number 3.
What's the difference between coaching and what the analytics tell you? Brian Callahan has said that he's going to embrace analytics. And fans hear that and they get excited because they think analytics are good. Did you watch Super Bowl? Did you see Kyle Shanahan's answer there at the end of that game? I guess the Chiefs either don't use analytics or they don't have the same analytics, but they were going to kick the ball off in the Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan's analytics said, we want the ball. So when it comes to coaching, are you going to coach or are you going to let the analytics coach? I think it's a very fair question, given the way the Super Bowl ended. Because San Francisco's plan for any overtime that they could have gone into in the playoffs was, we're going to take the ball. I don't agree with it, but that's their opinion. But I definitely don't agree with it when Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback. So you mean to tell me that their same strategy for their divisional round playoff game against Jordan Love was the same strategy that they had in place for Mahomes? So again, who's coaching? You or the analytics department? And I think that's a fair question.
Number 4.
Is Chig good enough to be the starting tight end? I don't think so. I want to hear him say whether or not he thinks Chig can be the starting tight end.
Number 5.
I need to know that Brian Callahan is taking everything at the Combine seriously. And I mean everything. Because this is all an opportunity to be able to gather information. And you never know when you'll need that information. I already told the story earlier today on the program that in 2017, the San Francisco 49ers had the second overall pick. They did no homework on the quarterbacks in that draft, ended up trading it to move back to 3 with Chicago, who drafted Trubisky, and they took Solomon Thomas. And Patrick Mahomes went in the first round of that draft. Why did San Francisco do no work on the quarterbacks? Because Kyle Shanahan knew he was going to sign Kirk Cousins at the end of the year. They've lost 2 Super Bowls, both the Mahomes. It may not matter right now, but if you fall in love with a quarterback, you need to know. You need to know what you think. The Titans studied Kevin Carter, who was going to be a top 10 pick in the 1995 draft. They studied Kevin Carter. Kevin Carter said he didn't even know why the Titans studied him so closely. Well, in 2001, when the Titans needed an upgrade, there was a rumor out there that Kevin Carter was lazy and had a bad attitude, but the Titans knew that he wasn't because they studied him in 95, even though they were always going to draft a quarterback. So I need Brian Callahan to be taking all this seriously, even if it's not an immediate team need right now. Now to Rand, what I need to hear out of him.
Number 1.
I need to know what went wrong last year and where does he regret mistakes that he made. Because if Rand gets up there and doesn't want to talk about what happened last season, just like he didn't want to talk about it at the end of last season after they fired the coach, that's a red flag for me. Because I need somebody in that position that can be accountable. Somebody that can say, look, man, I screwed up on Andre Dillard. Not, oh, well, that's Mike Vrabel's fault. Or, what's even worse, is telling everybody it's Mike Vrabel's fault and then just saying, well, I don't want to talk about last year. No. You need to talk about last year. And you need to take accountability for where you messed up. Because as much as people want to pretend like Rand Carthon wasn't the GM last year, I think he was. And they failed miserably in the offseason. So if he avoids talking about what happened last year, then that tells me I don't have an accountable general manager. And if I don't have an accountable general manager, I'm not going to have an accountable team. So that's the first thing. Where'd you screw up last year? What did you regret last year? And don't give me that ball didn't bounce our way bull crap. So that's the first thing.
Number 2.
How active you plan to be in free agency? If I'm the GM and I know we're going to be major players in free agency because the owner has told me, hey, you've got $120 million in cash to spend, then I want everybody to know it. I want every agent to think, hey, I'm a payday waiting to happen. And I want my fans to know, hey, fans, we're going big in free agency. And if Rand Carthon gets up there tomorrow and says, oh, well, we'll see, that's not really going to build much confidence in me.
Number 3.
I want this explanation of how players for Brian Callahan are different than the players for Mike Vrabel. Because I think that's bullcrap. I think this idea of, well, we need to know what kind of players we're looking for because we're going to run the wing tee this year. I think that is a line. I think it's easy to say. I don't think it's very, realistic that, oh, now we're totally looking for something else. But if you are, explain it to me.
Number 4.
Where are we on analytics? Is this, last year it was all under construction. You'll see in the future our analytics, we're building them out. We're going to have the best analytics, but we don't have them yet. Are we done? Can we use analytics now, or is it still a work in progress? Because if it's going to take 5 years to build out the analytics department, don't bother, because if things don't get better, you won't be here in 5 years.
Number 5.
Finally, I need Rand Carthon tomorrow to prove to everyone that he's in charge. And he's got to be able to do that without hurting anybody's feelings or ruining the idea of collaboration. But at the end of the day, the buck stops somewhere. And I want Rand Carthon to give every single person that's a Titan fan that's either watching a live stream of the press conference, listening to him on Chasing Big Joe tomorrow, whatever it may be, I want every single Titan fan to walk away from that, including me, having the impression that the buck stops with him. I need him, and I know in this collaboration effort and everything else that everybody talks about, and Rand doesn't want to push the envelope, I don't care. Is it your team or is it not your team? So tomorrow, I want to walk away from that feeling like that dude is in charge of that team. Not, oh, well, Miss Amy thought this, and we'll have to talk to her about it. Because if that's the case, then you're really not a GM. You're just there. And everybody tells me that Rand is a lot more than that. Well, let's see it. So that's what I want to hear out of those two tomorrow. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on that. Plus, a legend is hanging it up. It makes me kind of sad. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Good morning, Mike. You act like me retiring matters. I mean, let's, or like it's some huge bit of news.
Yeah.
And look, it
is,
what I've
Peter.
done.
It is.
And
It is.
Oh, I mean.
Don't sell yourself short. It is.
I don't sell myself short. I know I did a good job, or at least I think I did, but I'm a reporter. I'm not somebody who you go to see. I'm somebody who you go to read. But beside all that, I am, I'm really kind of humbled at your words and at a lot of people's words about me walking away. But, Mike, I just think that as I have watched this life, this world, so many of my peers who either die on the job or don't go out on their own terms.
There you go. Peter King this morning, Football Morning in America, announced that he is hanging it up and that Peter King is retiring from the NFL. And I was thinking about this today because I don't know about you guys, but I grew up with Peter King. And Peter King, I grew up with Sports Illustrated coming to the house and Peter King and Dr. Z. And, I read Peter King's column when it was at Sports Illustrated, and now I read it when it's at NBC. And I'm a Peter King fan. And I don't know Peter that well. I know him okay, and I really like him. But that is a dying breed of reporter that he is. Like the star storyteller. And what we now have, we have the star insiders like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport and Adrian Wojnarowski and the guys that, hold on, I'm getting a text right now. Sources confirm Russell Wilson, blah, blah, blah. And that's the star insider. And we've got the star take-haver. Stephen A. Smith, Colin Cowherd, Skip Bayless. Here's my opinion on LeBron. But the star storyteller, that era is over. And I think in large part because nowadays, if people want to tell their story, they just tell their story. They've got their own means of doing it. Their own social media, their own inside look, their own production company, their own team website. But back in the day, if you wanted to know what a road trip with John Madden was like, you had to read Peter King, who flew to New York to get in the bus and ride with John Madden for a week so that they could get to Oakland to be able to do a game. And that's how we learned back in the day. And so when it comes to Peter King, he's retiring for good. Let me just say this. Peter King, salute. Sad news today. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, didn't Rand Carthon just do an interview with an AFC South reporter? I saw it on Twitter today, but can't he ever talk to Titans media? That'll happen tomorrow. One texter said, if Rand doesn't meet with the media, I'm going to blow a gasket. Rand will meet with the media tomorrow. He will have a press conference in Indianapolis, and he will be on Chase and Big Joe tomorrow at 10:15. What's he going to say? I don't know. And I'm not going to pretend to know what he's going to say ahead of time. I will just say this. It has to be better than that last disastrous press conference that he had. And Ian and I were talking about it during the break, and Ian was like, oh, well, what was he supposed to do? They left him out to dry on that. And I'm like, he's got to show some ownership around here. Rand Carthon has to, instead of just telling people, oh, yeah, I am really, this. No, you got to show us that you are in charge of this operation. And so I expect Rand to handle the press conferences. And let me say this. The one thing I'm getting pretty tired of when it comes to whether it's Rand or Chad Brinker or whatever, Vrabel, just to the bone at the end of his tenure. I'm tired of being treated like we're stupid, right? When Rand sits down and we ask about the offensive line and says, oh, well, it was injuries. That's treating us like we're stupid. When you say the ball didn't bounce your way this season, that's treating me like I'm stupid because I know better. I watched the games. So did you all. That's all I ask. is if you don't want to answer a question, figure out a way of not answering it without saying something that makes me feel like you're treating all of us like we're stupid. Because that makes me more mad than anything. The idea that you think that all of us are so stupid that you can say, oh, the ball didn't bounce our way, and that we'll say, oh, well, I know I pay thousands of dollars for season tickets, and I know I love my team, and I know but the ball didn't bounce our way. That's just how it is at the end of the day. That's not going to fly. So I expect a real, true general manager like press conference tomorrow from Rand Carthon and a real bullcrap free interview on Chase and Joe tomorrow at 10:15. And if I don't get it, and if it's more of the same, if it's as bad as that draft night press conference was, or if it's as bad as that post Mike Vrabel firing was, woo! I'm not holding back, okay? That a month to prepare for this. It's time to be GM. 615-737-1025. But if you're thinking he won't know, he will. He will talk with the media tomorrow. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So tomorrow, Rand Carthon, Chase, and Big Joe, 10:15. Brian Callahan, Caroline, Willie, and D. Mace at 11 o'clock tomorrow. And they have their press conferences in Indianapolis, and they are hitting the talking circuit tomorrow. And apparently, Rand already got a head start, because he sat down with Fox Sports' Ben Arthur. Ben Arthur used to cover the Titans for the Tennessee, and now he's the AFC South reporter for Fox Sports. And I just read the piece that Ben Arthur did with Rand Carthon. Headline, why the Titans turned the franchise over to Rand Carthon after just 1 year as GM. Stop. Ian, I'm already mad.
Oh, boy.
Do you know why I'm mad?
Something about an excuse for the first year?
He was GM last year. Was he not in charge of the team last year?
Depends who you ask.
So last year, I reported this. I talked to somebody who was in the building who told me that Rand likes to play GM more than he actually likes to be GM. And people went crazy that I said that. Again, I'm just telling you what I heard. And that's what I heard. Well, now that the season didn't go well, everybody's saying, well, Vrabel was in charge last year. So that means that my report about Rand playing GM instead of being GM was true. And what if that had been the case and the Titans had said at that point in time, yep, that's the case. He's just playing GM. He's not being GM. How would that have gone over? So keep that in mind. But Ben Arthur starts the whole piece off about how Rand Carthon, when he was in Atlanta, emailed an author of a music executive about Mariah Carey or something or another or whatever. That's the first part of it. The second part of the Ben Arthur piece, the sit down with Rand Carthon, is about how good of a relationship builder Rand Carthon is. And he references the Amy Adams Strunk statement about how Rand has made the Titans a destination for the league's top talent. Okay. Ben Arthur writes, quote, the way Carthon sees his enhanced position, which again is the GM position, okay? But whatever. The way Carthon sees his enhanced position, nothing has changed how he navigates team headquarters, even with more initials in his title. He bounces around team headquarters at St. Thomas Sports Park, meeting with people from different departments. He encourages others in the organization to do the same. Carthon does it in part to show folks that he's not just a football guy. He wants to understand the entire organization and how he can help. He views his role holistically. That sounds great, but I need to know who's going to play tackle next year. How are you going to fix the offensive line? In fact, I'll be honest with you. If this is the message they're trying to push, which is that, hey, Rand is going to involve himself in every asset of the team, not just football, then I'll already say, call me in 3 years when this is over. Because what Rand needs to be worried about is football, okay? Like what they need to be worried about when it comes to the general manager is football. Oh, yeah, he bounces around at team headquarters. He wants to talk to everybody. Look, I'm not saying lock yourself in the office and only worry about football, but the bouncing around should be bouncing around from the offensive line coach to the scouts, bouncing around from the special teams coordinator to the defensive line coach, bouncing around to the head coach that's what that should be. I don't need you going down to the ticket selling department to sit there and say, hey, man, how many club level seats you sell today? Man, that's awesome. Now, if somebody at ticket says, hey, man, I really need you to make this call to seal this sale, that's different. That's helping the team. But this just bouncing around. Burke Nihill tells Fox Sports, Rand is a master relationship leader. He invests in his team. He invests in the players. He just has an ability to perceive what they need to hear. So why can't he do that when it comes to the media and the fans? He's different, Burke says. I've only been in football for 8 years, but he's different from any leader I've been around in that way. And I think it's a skill that would translate anywhere. It would translate into business. It would translate into community leadership. But in football, it stands out. Can it stand out with the Titans winning some more games before we get so excited about it? So anywho, as I read this article, Like, there's one thing in here that I really care about. And that is, by the time I left San Francisco, Rand Carthon said, I knew exactly what our scheme required and what skill sets are meant to play in the scheme. And you can see that on the tape. I would be able to go to Kyle Shanahan and say, hey, Kyle, this player fits, but this player would drive you crazy, because I had spent time with Kyle to understand what Kyle liked in players. Then Kyle can go and say, this guy is talented, but he would frustrate me. Okay, that, yes, that matters. The next paragraph, Carthon spent 6 years with San Francisco, first as director of pro personnel and then as director of player personnel, and he credits 49ers Enterprises and executive vice president of football operations, Parag Marath, with taking him under his wing and helping him understand the football business. But Carthon's inspirations extend far beyond sports. He credits Bill Spotswood, a real estate developer in his adopted home of Key West, Florida, as being the first person to show him the value of relationships. He counts Marvin Ellison, the chairman and CEO of Lowe's, as a mentor. And he has leaned on venture capitalist Rudy Klein Thomas, a former sports agent and prominent voice in the athlete investor community, for advice. Can Rudy Klein Thomas find you a left tackle? Can Marvin Ellison, the CEO and chairman of Lowe's, can he figure out how to keep the punter from getting his leg broken? I mean, I'm serious about this. Also, by the way, Rand got his start in Atlanta. Arthur Blank owns the Falcons. Arthur Blank founded Home Depot. And his mentor is the CEO at Lowe's. I mean, that's got to be some tea, right? Anywho. Basically, this talks about how, like, Rand is, again, just kind of all over the place. And that's not a good thing. In fact, the more I read this, the more I get mad. Because what I care about is left tackle, wide receiver, tight end. If we spend all of our time talking to the CEO of Lowe's, are we going to be able to figure out whether or not Chig Okonkwo should be the starting tight end of this team next year? Rand Carthon said of his influences from various spaces, quote, that kind of all encompasses what a football organization is. Huh? You look at it from that standpoint. These NFL teams and owners are now making investments into other sports leagues, into other spaces and areas. And I'm the type of person that sees that and I sit back and watch. Huh? So, that's the first interview, is about all of Rand's interests outside of football and how those people mold him, and about how he likes to talk to everybody in the organization, not just the football people, and that's great. But again, what in this makes me think that they're going to be able to solve left tackle? Because that's what I'm really concerned with. So again, like I said, tomorrow when he talks, I need to know, what regrets does he have from last year? Like, what does he look at and say, I screwed that up? Because if he doesn't have any regrets from last year, then this ain't going to work. And I need him to prove that he's in charge of football without hurting anybody's feelings. But this idea of like, oh, no, we're all going to do this all together and as a great team and that's all lip service. That's nothing. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Vincent has been waiting patiently and is up next here on the program. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Vincent?
Well, yeah, guys, all we got to look at is your observation usually is not wrong. Now, you go back to his press conference after Vrabel was fired. He was asked, Rand, you basically weren't available at all. No press conferences, nothing. Basically crickets all year. And he responded by, well, it was my first year, and I'm going to learn from my mistakes. Well, I don't need no on-the-job training. This team has been trash. You either know what you're doing or you don't. And then to his press conference tomorrow, he'll just, Diana will ask him, well, what'd you have for dinner last night, Rand? And write a full script on that because, she's got to have facts before to print what she has. She can't just say what she wants to. She's got to have facts. And I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your call. Again, when it comes to the, I needed to learn, like learning on the job happens. But you're not supposed to make as big of mistakes as they made last year. And I've told you the same thing happened to Vrabel, right? Vrabel lost 7 games in a row to end the 2022 season, and not one person in town, including me, not one person in town blamed Mike Vrabel. But then when things didn't go well for Mike Vrabel, when things were bad for Mike Vrabel this season, it turned into Vrabel's only won 5 of his last 28 games. So now Vrabel's being punished for what happened in 2022, even though at the time he wasn't punished at all. Well, that's what's going to happen to Rand, right? Everybody wants to give Rand a second chance. Everybody wants to believe that Big Bad Vrabel was the problem with everything and that it was all Vrabel's fault, and maybe it was. Certainly, I didn't shed any tears over losing Vrabel. I advocated for his firing. But at the same time, last year did happen. And so while it's convenient to say, oh, well, that was Vrabel's fault, if the things this year happen and it's bad again, nobody will do that. And he will be held responsible for what happened last year. That's like, again, when TD says, on the show, and I love TD, but when TD says that he would wait until the 4th round of the draft to figure out the starting center position as opposed to free agency, where there are a lot of guys that could be available there, I'm like, that's going to get Rand Carthon fired. Because if he goes into this year winging it on the offensive line again after what happened last year, these fans are not going to accept it. And if we've learned anything about Amy, it is that she will turn on you. I mean, if you're in the circle of trust, good for you because you'll get paid. But the second you piss her off, I mean, it looks like it doesn't take long for her to flip that switch. So I'd be careful. But again, I think if they screw up this offseason, then everything that we are right now ignoring, that we're forgiving Rand Carthon for last year, then comes back into play. Which is not necessarily fair, nor is it right to do, but it's just the reality of the situation. 615-737-1025. More of your phone, 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. We'll get right to your phones, 1025-1063 The Game.
Rand is one of those guys that grew up around football and NFL football, right? Remember that. That is a big thing. He was around his dad, who was a fantastic football coach. He's a guy that, back in the day, what I knew about Rand was a guy that knew everything about personnel. He knew the young ones. You know, he was just really good. He was very passionate about evaluating and about knowing what was available. Yes, 100% great guy. I know this is not about great guys in this league, right?
Sure.
You want winners. You want and Rand has the ability to win. He knows football. Give him, I would say, do give him a second chance. The fact that he's brought Anthony Robinson in here, A-Rob's got a really good eye as well. Those two guys are going to work really well together. I'm going to be very interested. I'm excited about your new head coaching hire in line with working with Rand, because I think that's going to be a really good mix versus what you guys went through last year.
Thomas Dimitrov on our show at the Super Bowl. All right, so give Rand a second chance. But he's got to earn the trust. At least in my case, I can't speak for you guys. He's got to earn my trust. And so tomorrow it's a big press conference for him, and that's a big interview. Tomorrow at 10:15 on the Chase and Big Joe show with Rand Carthon. And there can be no, oh, well, I got to talk to Amy, or, oh, well, no, Mike and I got, nope. He's the one in charge. Weston has been waiting patiently and is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Weston?
Hey, Jared. Just wanted to call in because I'm in this boat of the fans of I want to win now, but I'm also in this boat of you got to be careful, because I feel like we're going to end up, if we play this the wrong way, end up like the Panthers and have another period of 6-7 years of misery. So you have a coach that I feel like can get us over the top, but it's really going to come down to how Rand does this year. And if he plays his cards right. If he doesn't, he's got to go after this year, because I do not want Callahan falling for this. Thanks, Jared. I'll hang up and listen.
Yep, thank you for the call, Weston. See, here's my problem. This is why I would have fired Rand at the end of the year, right? And I know I just said he's getting a second chance, and he is. They made a decision that I don't necessarily agree with, but it's their decision to make, and we go from there. But this is why I would have fired Rand at the end of the year. Because what they did was they gave Rand Carthon a promotion. I don't think Rand Carthon did anything last year that is deserving of a promotion. And so they promoted him to executive vice president. They're putting their eggs in his basket, and they let him be a part of the process in order to hire a coach. Now, I don't know how they landed on Brian Callahan. My gut tells me Peyton Manning probably worked with both ownership and Rand, who he played with in Indianapolis. And my gut tells me that Peyton Manning probably pushed this hire, which I'm not against, because I'm fine with Peyton Manning being the guy that kind of, if you told me that the decisions at the Titans could be made by Peyton Manning or the other people that would be making the decisions, I would vote Peyton Manning too. So I'm okay with that. But, he got promoted. And so while I don't necessarily know if the Titans would go the route that the caller is going, which is if I don't see the improvement this year, Rand's got to go, I do think that by the end of this year, you all will have made up your mind one way or another. If the decision is that Rand has to go and the Titans fire him, well, now what are you going to do with Brian Callahan? You're going to go hire another general manager who didn't hire Brian Callahan to work with Brian Callahan. Does that make any sense? You already did this to Vrabel. It's not conducive to success in the NFL to hire a coach and then fire the guy who hired the coach and then bring in somebody else to work with the coach. So that's why I would have just cleaned house, because then I would have been able to hire the new GM, and the new GM would have been able to hire the new coach, and they would have been in this together. Not saying that I'm right, but that's why I would have done what I did, because I think that sentiment I think is real. If Rand doesn't get better, and again, we're giving him a second chance, right? But if it's not better after this year and the offensive line's a disgrace like it was last year, now what are you going to do? You're going to have the second overall pick in next year's draft, and you're going to let Rand Carthon make it? And that's the rock and the hard place that the Titans have put themselves in. One texter says, what do you expect Rand Carthon to say negatively about Andre Dillard still under contract? You are also constantly wanting them to disclose what their internal strategy is. Don't they need that protected so that it can't be used against them in the draft and in free agency? We all want to know what you want to know, but we're all not invited into the boardroom. Well, first and foremost, the Titans last year, and this might have been Vrabel's fault. It might not have been. I don't know. But this time, the Titans at the draft last year completely let the cat out of the bag on what their strategy was. But when it comes to, Jared, what do you want them to tell you? They can't tell you the truth. Yes, they can. Now, they can't tell us everything. And let's use Will Levis as an example. Where are we on Will Levis? I think we're all in the same place. Will Levis is a starting quarterback in the NFL, and he is your starting quarterback. Is Will Levis a superstar? I don't know. Will Will Levis be a superstar? I don't know. Do the Titans need to do everything in their power to enable Will Levis to be a superstar? Yes. But as I've said many times, I saw somebody on Twitter, Justin Jefferson may hit the market in Minnesota. And I saw somebody on Twitter put out there that he would trade, and I forget who it was under the For You tab, which I've started to use a lot lately, that he would trade the 7th pick and next year's first-round pick and some other pick, and he would do that in order to get Justin Jefferson. And I'm like, look, I love Justin Jefferson, but I'm not dealing next year's number 1 pick. And I'm not dealing next year's number 1 pick for anything except for Mahomes or Joe Burrow. And the reason why I'm not doing that is because next year's number 1 pick is Will Levis insurance. Because while, again, I think we're all in the same spot on Levis, he might suck. Like, he might be Zach Wilson. He might not be very good. I think he'll make it, but we don't know that. And so when you're saying, you want to be in the boardroom. No, the boardroom is the Titans sitting there saying, hey, I know we're not in the market for a quarterback, but we have run the comps on J.J. McCarthy, who might be there with the 7th pick, and we think J.J. McCarthy is a true franchise guy. And so if we draft J.J. at 7, what do we think we could get in return the next day when we turn around and try to flip Will Levis to Minnesota or to Atlanta or to the Raiders or wherever? That's the kind of stuff that can't get out of the boardroom. But the idea of, hey, is Will Levis your starting quarterback? Whoa, we can't give away secrets. They can be more open about that. It's just like Skoronski, right? Where is Skoronski going to play next year? Is he an option at left tackle? If you think Skoronski is your guard and he can't play tackle in the NFL, you can say it. It's okay. It's okay to admit you screwed up last year when you signed Andre Dillard or Aaron Brewer or something like that. Now, you don't have to say, yeah, that was a real big screw-up on our part because Andre Dillard freaking sucks. You don't have to do that. But what you can do is you can say, yeah, last year we had a plan for Dre and we signed him to a deal and we were really excited about that. And so, right now we're probably looking for more consistency. And we'll probably be exploring every avenue we can in order to be more consistent at that position. Translation, he ain't going to be on the team next year. One texter says, Rand Carthon sounds like the water cooler guy. He's cool with everyone, but when it's time to do the work, he's not at his desk. Again, that's kind of the vibe I get, but we're giving him a chance. We're giving him a chance. And with this chance, with this chance that he's got, we'll see. One texter says Dillard and Brewer starting on the line last year was a rookie GM mistake. Those 2 spots cannot be misses again. Agreed. And that's the second chance. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. Coming up next, boy, there are some rumors, and there are rumors about the wide receiver position. There's the trade everybody would make. There's the target Titan fans, I think, are now coming to grips with they probably can't have. And there's some things that, quite frankly, if I'm the Titans, I wouldn't do. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Of the franchise tags for this season has been applied. The Bengals officially using that on wide receiver T Higgins this morning. He's going to make $21.816 million this year if he plays on the franchise tag. He's been looking for a long-term deal. It's possible they still give him one. It's possible, we've seen guys get tagged and traded. Obviously, that's a potential outcome, but the Bengals have been really firm the last couple off seasons on trying to keep this group together, and franchising T Higgins, especially a week before the deadline, tells you they're still determined to do that.
Tag on T. Dominique, your reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I love that they're going to keep him. It's unfortunate that he's not going to get the long-term commitment, but I think they should commit to him long-term. I get you don't want to have too much money tied up in one position group, but when you've had success playing that way, why try to be like anyone else? People would die for this amount of receiver talent. I think they need to pay Chase and Higgins and and then try to figure it out elsewhere and let Joe Burrow, when he's healthy, go out there and make defenses pay.
Sign all the players. I mean, I don't see why Cincinnati, a traditionally poor franchise, why they can't just sign everybody. I mean, it's that simple. So I think a lot of Titan fans, no matter how many times, and Ian, how many times do you think over the last 4 months, ever since everybody knew that the Titans were going to stink last season, and everybody started to turn their attention to this season, and everybody started talking about cap space, how many times did I say T Higgins is not going to be a free agent?
Oh, a handful, fair amount.
I mean, I'd say maybe 1,000,000 times, because that would come up every time. Sign T Higgins. Good luck. I mean, can we sign Mahomes too while we're at it? I mean, it just was never going to happen. Now, I'm not convinced that T Higgins is coming back next year for Cincinnati. But I don't consider T Higgins an option because I wouldn't give up 7 or 38 for him straight up. 38 maybe if Brian Callahan stood on the table for him, but supposedly they're supposed to be really good wide receivers that are available at 38, so why would I not just take a younger, faster guy and hope that he can be better than T Higgins? So I don't think T Higgins will be there. But, I mean, I think he'll be available to trade for, but I'm not sure at what it would cost. And I don't think any of these receivers on the free agent market, who I would be interested in signing, whether it's Ridley or Davis or whomever, Hollywood Brown, or I don't think any of these guys are number one receivers outside of Mike Evans, but it doesn't mean that they wouldn't have value in adding to the team. But the big rumor that is out there, and I think will continue to percolate, a veteran writer, a veteran columnist in Minnesota put out yesterday that there is more steam that is gaining towards a Justin Jefferson trade. And the reason I think this might be happening is because Minnesota is at a rock and a hard place, right? Kirk Cousins probably isn't coming back. The general manager has never liked Kirk Cousins. When he took the job, he came out and said, well, he's not Brady or Mahomes, which did not go over very well. But this is the time to break up with Cousins. If you do that, you got to figure out how you're going to get a quarterback. And I don't know if you can do that with the 11th pick in this year's draft. And I'm talking about get a long-term answer at quarterback. So if you don't have a long-term answer at quarterback, what good does paying Justin Jefferson $31 million a year do for you? So I could see it. And I could see this maybe as being a way to gain some steam just to see what's out there with Jefferson, because, again, everybody is probably going to call if they're interested in Jefferson. Now, I would be interested in Justin Jefferson. While I would not be interested in giving up the high picks for Higgins and paying Higgins, because I don't know if Higgins is that good, I do know Jefferson is that good. Jefferson is a game changer. But here's what's crazy with Jefferson. I saw somebody tweet out this massive package that it would take in order to get Justin Jefferson. I'm like, you don't have to give up that much. There are two things that are working in favor for the Titans in a deal for Justin Jefferson. Number one, precedent is in the Titans' favor. That's the first part of this equation. Because in both the Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams trades, the package that was received by the trading team, Kansas City or Green Bay, was nowhere near the value of the 7th overall pick. My guess is if you picked up the phone and you called Minnesota today, then I bet you Minnesota would want to start at 7 and go from there. And I don't think Justin Jefferson's worth the 7th overall pick. Even A.J. Brown went for the equivalent of the 16th overall pick. There is a night and day difference between the 7th overall pick in terms of value, especially in this draft, the 7th overall pick and the 16th overall pick. I think I did the math a couple of weeks ago. In order to equal the Tyreek Hill trade, you would have to swap with Minnesota and give them a second in next year's draft, the 38th pick, and I want to say a second in next year's draft. I'd consider it. Now, I don't know how you would compare, say, Odunze and Neighbors, one of whom might be available, although they may not be available, so it'd be a risk. I don't know how you would compare them. plus the 38th pick with that of Jefferson. But I would consider switching 7 and 11 and giving them 38 and your first round pick your second round pick in next year's draft, or third round pick and fourth round pick in next year's draft. I would consider doing that for Justin Jefferson. But precedent is on your side. And again, if you do that, you're still making a pick in the first round. And you're still probably guaranteed, even though Olu Fashanu and Joe Alt might not be there, you're still guaranteed that Aurelius Mims, who's the left tackle at Georgia, might be there. And these right tackles that should be available, J.C. Latham and the kid out of Oklahoma, those guys should still be available. So you can still get a tackle, and you get your receiver that you would use the 38th pick on, and it's Justin Jefferson. Just going to cost you about $120 million. Or maybe $130 million. The other thing, and I've already said this, if I were the owner, I would absolutely positively not allow the Titans to use their 2025 first for anything. There is nothing that I would use the 2025 first for. Because, again, if I were the owner, I wouldn't allow it. Because somebody texted into the text line and said, well, give Levis an offensive line and see what he can do. Well, that's the plan. But we don't know, even if you get Will Levis an offensive line, if Will Levis can be the guy. We don't know that. So you need Will Levis insurance. And your Will Levis insurance is the 2025 first. Because if Levis stinks, then the team will stink. That's how the NFL works. And if the team stinks, then that 2025 first is probably going to be second or third overall, and then you draft your quarterback. So unless you're somebody who's just not willing to pretend at all that there's a chance that Will Levis might not be the guy, you know deep down inside you got to keep that first-round pick next year in your back pocket. So when it comes to Jefferson, and I don't know if Jefferson's available or not, and I don't know if the discussion at the Combine is going to be about Minnesota just kicking the tires, seeing what they can get, knowing that it's going to be hard to give Jefferson $130 million, and they might be stuck with J.J. McCarthy at quarterback or Michael Penix at quarterback, or who knows. But if you're Minnesota and you're just seeing what's out there on the Jefferson front, I'd call. But they're probably not going to like what I'd offer because, again, the precedent is Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. And if that's not good enough for them, then that's fine. But I'm not dealing next year's first-round pick. 615-737-1025. Cameron texts into the text line and says, no on T Higgins. T Higgins is not a number one wide receiver. So I would tend to agree. And again, I don't want to take the stats and just say, well, the stats say T Higgins because, again, T Higgins plays on a team with Jamar Chase. And if you play on a team with Jamar Chase is going to get the ball. So the stats may not be, number one-esque. But the question has to be, when you're a really, really good other guy, what would you do if you didn't have Jamar Chase there? What would you do if you didn't have Joe Burrow playing quarterback? Because Joe Burrow will not be playing quarterback with the Tennessee Titans. And so I couldn't tell you on Higgins. I mean, I like Higgins. I do. I just kind of feel in my heart there's probably a chance that one of these guys you draft, and I'm not just talking about at 7, but I'm talking about at 38 too, that they may end up being as good as Higgins. There is nobody that you could draft at 38 that will be as good as Jefferson. Jefferson, what you're sacrificing by making a deal for Jefferson, and again, I don't think Minnesota would accept a pick swap from 7 to 11 and then your second next year. I don't think Minnesota would accept that. Now, there's a chance because Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the general manager at Minnesota, made a horrific trade at the top of his first draft. So maybe he's a moron. I don't know him. But maybe he'll do something stupid, but I doubt it. But, I mean, if you call, they're going to want to start at 7. Like, they're going to want 7 and next year's second and next year's third, and they'll give you this year's fourth in return. And the answer to that is no. But what you're trading by doing that, if you end up passing on a Neighbors or you end up passing on a Dunze in order to trade for Justin Jefferson is you are taking the sure thing at a high price, because you're going to have to pay him, with an injury over the chance that you can get that guy on a rookie contract. And I'm okay with taking that chance when it's Justin Jefferson. I'm not okay with that chance when it's T Higgins. 615-737-1025. The Predators are on a freaking heater. And I just don't want anybody to forget what led to the start of this unbelievable heater. And maybe we should keep that in mind. We'll get to that next. Here on the program, 615-737-1025, Twice Daily. I was at Twice Daily this weekend. I got myself a turkey and cheese bagel in the morning, and oh my God, was it freaking delicious. I ordered it on my app, and I went right in. It was waiting for me. It was smoking hot. It was just wonderful. I love it. And I love Twice Daily. And what I also love about Twice Daily, and you should too, is they're trying to send you to Italy. That's right, a dream trip to Italy. All you have to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program, purchase a made-to-order Italian sub, and you'll be entered in the Twice Daily sweepstakes to win an Italian trip of a lifetime. Every sub purchase is a chance to win. Or place an Italian sub mobile order for double entry. Visit Twice Daily today for the chance to win a dream trip to experience the breathtaking beauty and rich history of Italy. Go to twicedaily.com/sweepstakes for more info.
First time ever a Preds team has swept a 5-game road trip. So what does it mean to your team to not only pick up all 10 points, but now you're in that wild card spot?
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool. I mean, it's, like you said, we had a tough week and we knew we had to show reaction. And I mean, those road trips, they're never easy. To be able to win 5 games is definitely a sign of a good team. So we're definitely happy with the way the road trip went.
There you go. That was Roman Josi. And I have not heard anybody make this point. But the Predators just went and set a record on their road trip and really turned their season around, right? Like, I think we can agree with that, Ian, that they really, where things were last Thursday and where they are now, it's almost night and day. The Predators, if the playoffs started today, would be in.
For sure.
They are ahead of St. Louis. They are on fire. Well, I just want everybody out there to know that I don't think it's an accident. I don't think it's a coincidence that I went on the road trip to St. Louis to start this unbelievable trip, and all of a sudden the Predators are on fire.
Are you trying to take credit for this?
Maybe. I'm just saying, I don't think it's an accident. Things weren't going the right way. Jared hops aboard, Pred Force 1. I'm sitting there. All the players get on the plane. They see me. They're probably like, oh, man, we're in trouble. Well, we better turn this around. They put Jared Stillman out here, and they haven't lost since. I'm just saying that right now I'm 1-0.
So are you saying you had more influence or the canceled U2 concert?
Well, I think that definitely had something to do with it. And I don't even think it was about the U2 concert because, I mean, like the young guys that need to step their game up.
They probably don't care about U2.
They're not really the U2 demographic. But 2 nights in Vegas, staying at the hotel with the team, with the girls, with the partying, I'm an NHL player. There is value in that. As I said, to everybody, they pull this right here. If they were in the NBA and half the team would demand a trade, like they'd have to fire the coach the way the Milwaukee Bucks had to fire the coach just out of thin air because I guess Giannis and Damian Lillard weren't happy. So I'm just saying. And I told the Predators, they're sitting there talking about, hey, you're 1-0 when you're with the team. And I say, you know what? And if you guys need that luck or whatever it is that I brought to the team, if you guys need that for a Game 7 of a Cup final, I'll hop on the team plane and go to that one.
Western Conference Final versus Vegas in Vegas.
Well,
you'll be there.
I'm thinking that the first round of the playoffs is either going to be in Vegas or Vancouver if the Predators make it. And I don't assume that I would go with the team on this, but I don't know. But I think there is a very strong chance that Stillman and company would be live from Vegas or Vancouver before games 1 and 2 of the playoffs. I do not think that Stillman and company would be live from Dallas ahead of games 1 and 2 of the playoffs, though I don't know. I'm just saying. Especially Vancouver. Like, have you ever been to Vancouver?
Yes, long time ago, but yeah.
Oh, it's awesome. Now, the Predators got a big one tomorrow night. And that's the thing about these games is that the goalpost keeps getting moved, right? Like the Predators, it was bad, it was awful, and all of a sudden, the Predators, they win 1. Now you want to win 2. And then you beat LA. Now it's like, oh, don't lose these 2 trap games. And they didn't. Well, now that they've won all these games, that's great, pat on the back, but you got to win tomorrow against Ottawa. Now, Ottawa plays tonight at Washington, and so they'll be traveling, and it'll be the back end of a back-to-back, so that's a good thing. But tomorrow's game has massive ramifications for the Predators, and so does Thursday, but we can't, again, we can do whatever we want. The team cannot look ahead. They cannot look ahead to Thursday night against Minnesota. In fact, if the Predators win, according to Money Puck, how about this? If the Predators win in regulation, the Predators have a 65% chance of making the playoffs. If they lose in regulation, according to Money Puck, they have a 50% chance of making the playoffs. So we're talking about a 15-point swing. So, tomorrow's a big one. And again, we'll be live from Bridgestone Arena. We got a ton tomorrow on the show. Rand Carthon, 10:15 on Chase and Big Joe tomorrow morning. Brian Callahan, 11 o'clock tomorrow on Caroline, Willie, and D. Mace. Barry Trotz, as always, 5 o'clock, right here on a Tuesday ahead of Preds in Ottawa tomorrow night at Bridgestone Arena. Stillman and Company, great show today. We will see everybody tomorrow at 2.